So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So tell you a little bit about the program and who we are. First off, my name is Tim Schilling. So I manage the project development team with the land conveyance section. So ultimately, my staff and I are the ones responsible for creating project areas such as these staking areas, as well as creating project areas for like subdivision sales, such as for our annual seal bid auction. For that. And so, yeah, I've been with this program for several years, and I'm just here helping out with the staking presentations. And then also here kind of working behind the scenes, we've got Justin Woolley. So for folks that, do you want to introduce yourself for the folks online?
Yeah,
good. Come up there. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Justin Woolley. I work with Tim Schilling. I'm part of the sales and marketing team for the land conveyance section. So I've been sending the emails out to everyone, and you'll most likely be chatting with me or someone in my team, potentially Brandon Phillips, when you either have questions about staking or turning a lease application. A little down the road, I'll be working a little bit more with Tim and some of the other folks in the land conveyance section when you all turn in lease applications. We'll work in a small team and just kind of go over stuff and make sure things look okay. And if not, we'll reach out to you and try to fix anything. But otherwise, I'll help you get through going through to your lease and get you set on that path. And I'm in the Anchorage office in Suite 640, and I've got contact information in the supplemental staking instructions. And all the emails I've been sending out. So feel free to give us a call at the land conveyance section, or send us an email if you have any questions. Encourage you all to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so a little bit about what we're going to cover today. We're going to start out with some basic program information, and then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of how to specifically stake a parcel, and walking you all the way through the process, from kind of how to prepare for it, getting out in the field, doing the field work, staking the parcel, and then filling out the lease application, take you through the whole leasing process and purchase process of that. And then at the end, we'll get into some information about the individual staking areas, and we'll kind of go over some of the kind of nuts and bolts about, some of the reserved areas and restrictions and things to be aware of when you go out there. So one of the big things that we're really looking for in this, or our big goal, is we want everybody here to be successful. So if you have any questions, just, for folks in the room here, speak up. For folks online, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand. We got folks online that'll be that watch in this and make sure that we get answers to your questions. Depending on what it is, I might punt for a little bit anyway, if we're going to get to that in a little bit more detail later. But please, I want to make sure that we get everybody's questions answered before you leave here today. Additionally, as well, if you have questions that come up after the fact, please feel free to contact us. That's what we're here for. We want you to be successful. We want to help out. So another great opportunity here for folks either here in the room or for folks online. This is an excellent opportunity to meet other folks that are staking within your area. So some of our greatest successes have come from situations to where folks that are staking in the same area meet up, and then that gives you the opportunity for kind of many hands for doing the actual staking. Making the labor a little bit easier. Also for things like transportation, getting to and from the area, making sure that who's going to be in the area if you have an issue or something. It's pretty great. A lot of folks will coordinate to kind of meet up in the area at the same time. Maybe you can share a chart or something like that. But anyway, meet your neighbors, because ultimately that's these folks are going to be your neighbors. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll kind of get into the history of the program. So the Remote Recreational Cabin Sites program, it's started back in 2000. It's very similar to some prior Stake It Yourself programs, such as the old Homestead program. But with things like that, they required, so we had a kind of high failure rate on those programs, largely because they had a prove up requirement. So folks, once they staked the parcel, they had to do something else to prove up on it. Particularly with the Homestead program, they had to construct a dwelling and occupy that dwelling for a certain period of time before they could get title to it. And a lot of folks just didn't realize what that was going to take. Moreover, with those other programs, when folks staked under the former Stake It Yourself programs, it required that the individuals contract for their own survey. They had to get it surveyed themselves, and it was very expensive to get that survey done. So oftentimes folks couldn't afford a survey of a single remote parcel in remote Alaska. Or even if they could, trying to get a surveyor to actually follow through and complete that survey was very challenging. So we had kind of a high failure rate on that. So with this program, Where it's notably different is we have a staking period. Folks go out, they stake the parcel. You come back in, you apply to us, you lease it for 3 years, and during that 3-year lease with the possible extension of 1 year. During that leasing period, you have the sole and exclusive right to use the parcel, so you can use it as if you own it effectively. But during that period of time, we are going to survey the parcel and then have it appraised. And so by combining everybody together, we get the economies of scale. We can get a vastly reduced survey cost on that, for one. And since we are managing the contract, we can make sure that the surveyor follows through on their end and we get the survey completed. It's during that time, you lease it for 3 up to 4 years, doing quarterly lease payments during the first 3 years of the lease. And then you just get to purchase it outright at the end. So you own it, no strings attached. We don't control post-patent use of the parcels at all. So with this program, very similar to others, there's the drawing program to determine who gets eligibility. And so all of you were drawn for the parcel. And then, yeah. And so, yeah, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of it momentarily. So this is a list of the staff that you're likely going to be dealing with. So myself and Justin. So Justin and Brandon are going to be the two that you're probably going to be dealing with throughout most of this. If you are, for folks that might be joining us from Fairbanks or folks that might be coming in through the Fairbanks office, there's going to be myself, Colin Craven, Pat Hall, are folks you might deal with. We also have a couple of staff in Juneau, so Denise and Amand down there, but I'm guessing most folks probably aren't going to. I don't know if we have anybody from Juneau participating this year. But so these are the folks you're going to find. All of our contact information is located in the staking materials, which we're going to cover here in just a little bit. But you can reach out to us on the generic email, or just give us a call. Yes.
Oh, it's probably good to make it announcement that without an stakers.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so in case anybody didn't hear that, we are recording this presentation for other folks to be able to reference back to and watch later. So just FYI, if you're asking questions or speaking up, it will be recorded. So thank you. Okay, so this is this is some additional contact information. The Public Information Center, we have one in Anchorage and one in Fairbanks. They're open from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. And likewise, the remote recreational cabin site staff, so specifically Justin and Brandon, or any of the other LCS staff, we're available from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. So you can contact us at the general email, the dnr.rrcs email, which will go directly to it's a team email. And this information is going to be in the staking instructions. So we're going to, towards the end here, we'll go into some, I'll give you a demonstration of our Alaska Mapper program and some additional research tools and such. But a lot of everything we're going to be referencing here can be found from the DNR webpage, which is that dnr.alaska.gov webpage. And we'll cover some of the tools in there. So we're going to start out with the remote rec page, the Staker Resources page. Now, this one, everybody should have received a link to that. So everybody online, have you been to this page already? The Staker Resources page?
Yep.
So, no? Okay. Well, okay. So some yes, some no. So you should have received a link to this page in one of the emails anyway that Justin had sent out about this program. So we'll go through the information on here, but there's a lot of very critical information. You're going to need to go onto this page and read some of it. A lot of it you're going to need to print out. So and bring it to the field, and we'll cover that with you. So the link is up here at the top of the page. That is not directly linkable from the website. So we don't have it. We don't have basically a link that you can click on to get there. You actually have to enter this into the URL, and I recommend that you bookmark it. The reason we don't have it directly linked to the page is just we don't want somebody stumbling across this information and finding the information about how to stake a parcel and the application to do so, and then not understanding it and going out and trying to participate in the program if they have not gone through the drawing process and authorization process. So we just kind of keep that kind of hidden behind the curtain, so to speak, for that purpose. So this is generically the information on this page, or all those links to various documents and such. That's what we'll be referring to as the staking packet. So if you hear me refer to the staking packet or the staking materials, that's what we're referring to. So the first part of the page is going to be all the information that is generic to all of the staking areas. So in this case, both Antioch, Dostock, and East Fork Pass. It's going to have your general staking instructions. It's going to have, well, in fact, we're going to go through that in some detail here, and we'll do that in a minute. Then below that is going to be the specific information that's specific to each of the individual areas. So these are going to be the staking map just for East Fork Pass or Antioch Dostock, the individual supplemental staking instructions, etc. One thing I do want to key in on here is the link to the staking map. So this is something that I would encourage folks to come back in and check on regularly. So is there anybody that's planning on heading out right away at the beginning of the staking period on March 1st?
Yeah.
You are? Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. Okay. So it sounds like we've got a couple. Yeah. So in this case, that's the staking map. I would highly encourage you to check that before you head out. For folks in East Fork Pass, we did actually have a correction to the East Fork Pass staking map that just got posted on the website last night. For everybody else, so what happens when we so once somebody stakes, we do our best to try and get those parcels in there as quick as possible and have those projected on the staking map. So if you're going to be heading out later in the year, if you check back in on this, hopefully we'll have it updated to, to where parcels are actually located. And, we always encourage you to give us a call and kind of check and see. There might be other ones that are not on there yet anyway, but we try to keep that updated as closely as possible for what's actually out there in the field. So help you prepare for that. So there's a boundary coordinate map. We'll cover that gives you waypoints for the boundary of the staking area. And then we also have information about the other surveys that are out there. So these are going to be helpful for locating where the private property is within the area, and then also for locating a reference point, which we're going to ask for to start staking your parcel. And we'll cover that in some more detail. All right, so we're going to hop into how to actually stake the parcel. So actually, the kind of nuts and bolts of what you're actually going to be doing out there. So in a nutshell, kind of what we're going to cover here is the preparation for it, part of which is actually attending a staking workshop. So fantastic. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate that. And then we're going to go through completing the staking questionnaire and your application, all that. So we'll dig right in. Actually, well, I guess we're going to cover that. That's kind of foreshadowing. All right, so reading and studying the staking packet. So this is what we were talking about before. This is a link of all of those materials that are going to be on that website. So the general area specific, the general all areas of staking information, as well as the information specific to your area. So staking instructions, this applies to all areas. This is critically important. It's a large document, but please read through it in its entirety. So this is the instruction manual in effect of how to stake a parcel. So there's a lot of information. We'll cover some of that in a little bit more detail, but there are certain restrictions, such as if you're going to be staking along a water body, you cannot have more than 33% of your parcel boundary along that water body or water body frontage, which includes a staking setback from a water body, such as from Antioch River or Dostock Creek. Your parcel has to be reasonably compact, so roughly square or rectangular anyway. But it cannot exceed a 2-to-1 length to width ratio requirement. So it means, if you have a 5-acre parcel, for instance, the maximum is it can be 660 feet long by 330 feet wide. So that'd be 2-to-1 length to width ratio, things like that. So this covers all that, and it gives you a lot of assistance, kind of how to deal with some of those situations that you encounter in the field. As such, I strongly encourage everybody to print a copy of this out and bring it in the field with you when you go out there, so you can reference back to them. There's contact information for us and how to reach out to us if you have questions. And then there's a lot of other useful tools for kind of helping to calculate acreage and that sort of thing. So next is going to be your supplemental staking instructions. So this is going to be on the lower part of the page, specific to each area. This lists out the areas that are the reserved areas, staking setbacks, other things that are specific to that area. We have a list of public water bodies that are on there, and in fact, in Antioch Dostock, there's some very specific reserved areas. We have that information down at the bottom. We have an inset map on that. But this has all the information for those reserved areas, for those setbacks, if you are planning for when you are planning what size of parcel you want to stake or where you want to stake it. The base appraisal information is in here to help you kind of make that decision as to what you might be paying for whatever parcel you end up staking. So, and we'll get into that stuff in a little bit more detail as well. It also has a breakdown of the survey deposit and appraisal deposit, which we'll also cover later. So this is the staking checklist. So I should also have noted, please bring a copy of the supplemental staking instructions in the field with you, as well as this next one, which is the staking checklist. So this is just a very simple checklist to go down through. So before you even go out in the field, making sure you're going through that and you understand what you're going to be getting yourself into once you actually get out into the field. Bring this with you. It's going to help you prepare for going out there. And then once you're in the field, to make sure that you collect all the data that you need to collect, take all the photos that you need to collect, that sort of thing. So please bring this with you in the field as well. And then the next one is going to be a staking map specific to all areas. I covered that, showed you where that was on the map. There's a couple things on here. So it notes the setbacks, the reserved areas, and it shows you what water bodies are considered public. That's important. Generically, any water body that is 10 feet wide or wider, for any stream that's 10 feet wide or wider is considered a public water body. Any lakes or ponds 10 acres in size or larger. And we've done our best to identify that in advance. So those are going to be listed on here as well. And then this is also going to get into, it's going to display the magnetic declination. And for the purposes of when you're turning in your lease application, we're going to be asking you for the Meridian Township range and section where your parcel is located. We'll get into that as well. But that's all going to be on the staking map. So when you turn in your lease application, we're going to ask you to draw a picture of your parcel on here and submit that as well. So we have an idea as kind of where your parcel fits in the grand scheme of the staking area. All right. There is a boundary coordinate diagram. So this boundary coordinate diagram is going to, the boundary coordinate diagram shows monuments around the perimeter, or shows the coordinates, I should say, for the around the perimeter, even where there might not be monuments. Excuse me. These are all set. I'm just going to make a note that they are set in degrees, minutes, decimal seconds, and we'll kind of cover using that in your GPS, but be aware that a lot of consumer grade GPSs, they're going to default to degrees, decimal minutes instead of degrees, minutes, decimal seconds. And I'll walk you through that a little bit later, and we can certainly give you a little bit of tutorial on converting that if necessary. But with this one, this will help you kind of in that planning process. You can plug in some of these coordinates in advance and make sure you're within the staking area. We absolutely cannot convey you a parcel that is outside of the staking boundary for that. So that'll help you with a little bit of planning. The lease application, and this is the other one that I strongly encourage you to print out and bring into the field with you. The lease application, I mean, you have the beginning portion, that's kind of your vital statistics and some general information. And then after that, it is effectively a fill in the blank meets and bounds application, or meets and bounds property description for the application. So if you bring that out in the field with you, we're going to be asking things like, so to describe your corner post, what's it look like? And then give us photos of a close up of the corner post, the area view, and kind of shooting down the line anyway, to where you can kind of see from one corner post down each line relative to that. All that information is in here. So if you bring this with you, you can basically just use that as a guide and fill it in there. My recommendation, bring a copy out in the field, you can scribble all over it, take all of your field notes right on that copy. And then when you come back in, you can transfer all that information to a clean copy without all the bug guts and, mosquito dope and all that stuff on there, and turn that one in for your lease application. So I highly recommend bringing this into the field with you. And we'll cover filling this out a little bit later. Also included on that page is the brochure and the errata. So for updated information, in case you want to reference back to that. This is a flow chart for those who kind of like to look at the process kind of pictographically. If you kind of want to see step by step, somewhat the linear flow of how the project works, starting, submitting your application all the way up to the point that you've purchased it anyway. So this shows it all kind of on one sheet of paper. All right, so there's going to be a couple of fact sheets on the page. So one of them is going to be the generally allowed uses fact sheet. And so I'd highly encourage folks just in general, I mean, outside of just staking, you have to get yourself familiar with this. It explains the allowable uses on state land without having to get a permit to do so. So for instance, you can cut a trail across general state land up to 5 feet wide using hand tools, which includes a chainsaw. So if you're going to be, out there for folks in Antioch Dostock, if you want to go out there, you stake your parcel and you want to cut a trail out to some place to get access to hunting, trapping, fishing, whatever, perfectly allowable on general state land, recognizing that a lot of the area in Antioch Dostock is surrounded by Kuskokwim Corporation land. So that's different. But within the staking area, within state land, it's perfectly allowable use. You can use dead and down wood for a fire on site. So you can collect out dead and down wood. However, you cannot collect wood and then bring it back from state land and bring it back to your parcel or back home or whatever. That would require a firewood permit, which you can get easily. They're pretty much over the counter permits, almost anyway, if it's out area one. Yes.
That staking part, you passed that a little bit further. You were to go out and put your corners in, or you're going to come back to that?
Oh yeah.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So is there, on the map itself, is there generalized, we talk about corners, is there a way so that people going out there don't just crisscross each other, or is this because it seems to me it'll be kind of set out already, generalized, this is the shapes of things.
Hmm.
So that in my mind, I keep thinking everyone's, it's going to be a random property lines going in all different.
Right. So, and for folks online who might not have heard that, the question was, and I'm going to paraphrase that if I may just a little bit, is anything set up to where basically so the parcel lines, property lines don't crisscross, or, is it kind of randomized? Well, so in general, so the process, and we'll cover that in exactly how to do that. So what you're going to put in quarter posts, and you're going to brush and flag your boundaries, and you are not allowed to stake across another brushed and flag boundary. So that's part of it. And then as far as just, so that would prevent the crisscrossing of parcel boundaries or overlapping of parcels for that part.
Yeah.
You do, absolutely. We're going to be covering that in some detail as well. And then other things, there's, so insofar as parcels we already touched on have to be roughly square or rectangular, there's also certain other requirements for, like if you're staking up on a water body, the parcel boundaries have to be roughly perpendicular to the water body. So you're gonna have to follow the water body, a public water body on one side, and then where you depart that is gonna have to be roughly perpendicular. And so that, allows for multiple parcels to be able to be staked along the water body, or so I should say probably multiple usable parcels to be staked along there. So you're not kind of high grading all the good stuff there. So
I'm sure you guys have seen, but just looking at how not to make mistakes when you go out there and not end up with brushing out an entire line, and then somebody literally not very far away has brushed a line you didn't see or whatever, and making
right.
At what point things become very more uniform, easy not to make a mistake.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and we're going to be covering that. So, and I want to make sure I answer your question. So if we get through that part and I don't answer it, please, feel free to ask me again. But yeah, we're going to cover the whole process, the brushing process, flagging, marking it out, and then basically what to do if you come across another one in the field, et cetera. So, yeah. All right, awesome. All right, so yeah, so back to generally allowed uses. So yeah, you can cut a trail out to 5 foot wide using hand tools. You can use dead and down firewood on site. You need to get a permit if you're going to be hauling off site. You can use an off-road vehicle up to 1,500 pounds or on state land, or 2,000 pounds now under general permit for like larger side-by-sides and such for wheeled vehicles. So and where that's going to be critically important for the folks in Antioch Dostock, I'm guessing you're probably not going to be doing a whole lot of ATV stuff out there, but snow machines certainly. I mean, you can use a snow machine on state land. No issue there. And then for folks in East Fork Pass out there, I mean, it is a wide open area. So, I mean, yeah, you can use an ATV pretty much anywhere. You might have to swerve around the bush. Anyway, out there, there's not a whole lot of trees out there for folks who aren't familiar with the area. But no, you can use an ATV on state land up there. You can occupy state land for up to 14 days. So you can camp on it for up to 14 days. Now, when you stake your parcel, once you stake it, before you enter into the lease, it is still general state property anyway until that lease gets issued. So even if you staked a parcel, it's still public land, and somebody else does have the ability to camp on that parcel during that time. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to, I mean, if you let somebody know, hey, just FYI, this is going to be private property at some point, whatever, that's one thing, but you can't kick somebody off it just because you staked it. Once it's your parcel, or once you have it under lease, then certainly it's yours to, you have the sole right to control and manage that property. So yes, I mean, it's your exclusive right to use it. Anyway, but yeah, you can occupy state land for up to 14 days without a permit. After 14 days, you have to move 2 miles away before reoccupying that same site anyway. But anyway, so a lot of good information in here as to what you can and cannot do. This fact sheet, I won't get into too much detail on this, but this explains how the appraisal process works on remote recreational cabin sites. The one thing I will note is that with this, the appraisal has already been completed for the areas. So we know what a hypothetical 10-acre parcel in Aniak Dostock is, or a hypothetical 20-acre parcel in East Fork Pass, or whatever. So we already know what the value is. Once you stake that parcel, we are going to value your parcel against that appraised value on that. And we'll cover that in some detail later, and kind of how you can estimate that and kind of gauge what your parcel might be worth, depending on what you stake. So there's information for the Firewise booklet here. So for East Fork Pass, this isn't probably going to matter too much to you folks. For folks in Aniak Dostock, I do want to actually take a moment to highlight this. So by the time you go out there and you go through all the effort to to stake the parcel, to purchase the parcel, the whole bit, you put a cabin out there, you've invested quite a bit into that. I strongly encourage you to invest a bit of effort into protecting that structure as well, anyway, and protecting your property. So part of that is making that Firewise. And what ultimately that means is largely making it to where the area is defensible in case of a wildfire, right? So that includes clearing defensible space, cutting down trees like right next to the cabin. So if it burns through, it can burn hopefully around your cabin rather than through your cabin, right? So if you take a look at the picture of this cabin on the front of the Firewise booklet here, you can imagine that if we have firefighters in the area, so both of the areas that we have this year are full fire management option, which means that they receive second to critical, basically the next highest level of attack anyway. So if fire breaks out in the area, it's going to have a pretty high priority for putting that fire out. With that said, if there's firefighters flying over in a helicopter and they see this, they are not going to try and defend that structure, because that is a death trap. I mean, they have dead trees going right up to the front door of that cabin. I mean, there is no possible way that they can defend that, right? However, if you clear out some of the trees away from your cabin and then a bit further back, you limit up to get some of those fuels right up off of the ground. Yeah, they can drop firefighters in there. They can put up sprinkler systems. There's a lot of stuff that they can do to help defend that structure. But if you don't put in any effort ahead of time, they're probably not going to do it, because it's too dangerous for them to do it. So anyway, so just bear that in mind. Protect your investment by creating some defensible space. There's also going to be a photo release authorization on that. So a lot of the photos that you'll see in this presentation come from folks such as yourselves who are out there staking in the area. Anytime we have the opportunity to use those photos, we greatly appreciate it. Anyway, we love being able to showcase the folks that are doing the good work out there in the field. So if you are willing to do so, please fill this out and submit that with your application so we can go back and use some of those photos if you have some really good ones. So, and we've seen some great photos over the years. There's some pretty fun ones. All right. So there's this is a credit card form. So if you're going to be submitting your application via the mail, or if you're going to be emailing in the application, which would or faxing it, which is then going to have to follow up with the physical copy. But you can submit this in there. We can run the credit card. After the credit card goes through, we're just going to shred the document. So we're not keeping on record or anything, but you can pay with credit card. Anyway, any questions about the staking packet or any of those resources? Okay. All right. So now we're going to get into the preparation stuff for getting ready to go out in the field and specifically researching the area. So there's a lot of tools available to you to research the area. This one right here up on the screen is the Alaska Mapper program. We'll get into that a little bit at the end of the presentation. I'll show you some tips and tricks on this one. So you can get into it. The link for that one is this mapper.dnr.alaska.gov, the link down at the bottom there. It is a great tool for seeing where there's other private property within the area. You can even zoom down in on that. And then if you notice right up here, kind of in the top center of that window right there, it doesn't actually show the coordinate on this one, but wherever your cursor is within the map screen, it'll give you a coordinate. So it is a great approximate coordinate. We'll show you some ways to get some better refined data, but you can use this to measure out distance, measure out area. You can kind of pre-plan where you might want your parcel to go in advance. With this one. With that said, whatever is actually happening in the field rules. So if so the situation is different, topography is different, river might have changed a little bit. That's what's going to actually rule is what's in the field. But anyway, check out the area before you go out staking. The staking period doesn't start until March 1st. You are welcome to go out there in advance and drop around the area and check out, anything you want. You can go out there several times before you stake a parcel, no problem, if you're up for it. However, you may not brush, flag, mark, in any way mark that parcel prior to 8 a.m. on March 1st, the day of staking. Anyway, but you are welcome to go out there and even figure out where you want to put your corner post before before the staking period starts. But there's a lot of tools out there for, look at the topography, aerial information, look at Alaska Mapper. If you have some other ideas, whatever's handy. There's great programs like OnX and other topo programs that have some really good information. But do your best to research the area in advance, plan for it. So we're going to get into collecting some materials. So I'm going to actually jump ahead. So first things first, first aid kit and communication equipment, safety equipment first. I could probably put that at the top of the list, but I haven't yet. So we'll get to that. So the staking packet. So again, read through that information before you get out and print out a copy of the staking instructions, supplemental staking instructions, the checklist, and the lease application, and have that in your kit ready to go with you in the field. You are going to need a compass. So I would recommend get a decent compass, not like, it's the little Boy Scout kind of compass, but get a suitable compass for like, a Sun 2 compass, Brunto compass, something like that. Something that's pretty decent. You can get a good reading off of. By the way, does everybody know what the little mirror is on the inside of the compass is for? It's so you can see who's lost. So anyway, I know. So anyway, sorry, I love that joke. But anyway, so this compass is actually this is a good one. It has a adjustable declination screw. So this little brass screw in the back of the bezel right there, and this little metal tool that's on the lanyard, that's for adjusting your declination. We're going to cover that in a little bit. You don't have to do that. If you know how to do it, by all means, great, do it. If you don't know what you're doing, please do not. Anyway, because it tends to get messed up on that one. But get a decent compass. You're going to need a GPS unit of some sort. You can rent these. You don't necessarily have to buy one. I see you brought yours with you. Fantastic. But yeah, so with that, be familiar with how to use it. In fact, I'd even recommend bringing the user manual into the field with you when you go out there. But and bring extra batteries, and that includes extra batteries for everything. Anything that's on this list, you should probably have some sort of redundancy for. So we'll get into cameras here in a second, but kind of a sob story that we had. We had some folks that were going out and staking a parcel out. I think it was Ween Lake, interior Alaska, on a lake. They chartered a plane, flew out there in the float plane, and got out there, did everything, did all their staking, got all their photos, everything was complete. She was getting out of the plane. When she got back to the dock, camera fell out of her pocket and in the lake, and it was all gone. So she had to go back out to the area to get the photos because we cannot accept that lease application without the photo documentation. So redundancy is a big thing. I mean, even if you go out and get one of those little plastic disposable cameras, you can have the film developed afterwards. That's great. You're going to need some means to measure your parcel other than just the GPS, and we'll cover kind of measurements and such with a GPS later. But you're going to actually want to physically measure the parcel. You can do that. You can get something like this. Like down here in the center of the screen, the bottom center, that kind of blue image there, that's a reel tape pull measure. Basically, it's a long measuring tape. You don't actually need to go out for something like that. Just make it really simple. Get yourself a 200-foot length of rope, or paracord or something like that. Measure it out, and then you can knot it at 50-foot increments, and then down towards the last 50 feet, you knot it at 10-foot increments, and then 5 foot or something like that. And you're good. You want to measure out, if your line's going to be 330 feet long, you pull it out once, that's 200 feet. Pull it out to the halfway knot, that's 300. And then you're basically going to pull out 3 of the 10s, and that's 330 feet. Super simple. Anyway, real easy to go for. I don't know if I have I don't have a copy, a image of this. Another tool that is really great, anyway, is called a hip chain. I learned the hard way in one of these staking presentations. If you Google just hip chain, you're going to get some very scanty kind of jewelry stuff. Anyway, so if you put in forestry hip chain, it's actually a lot better results. What it is a little box that hooks on your belt, and it's got a little spool of thread in there. And it's on a little wheel. And so you basically just you walk up to a tree, you tie it off to that tree, you zero it right there on the belt, and then you just go walking through the area, and it's just going to pull off that string and clicking off the feet as you go. And then you get out, so you're going to be, measuring your parcel. It's, we'll say 1,320 feet. You're staking a 20-acre parcel. 1320 by 660. So you walk a quarter mile through there. When it hits 320, you can just clip the line off. It's cotton, it's a cotton thread. It's just going to, biodegrade. It's not a problem. Anyway, and you're done. Anyway, that's it. I mean, it's a very, very simple tool. For those who are staking ENIAC dough stock, that's probably going to be plenty sufficient. Depending on where you might be staking in East Fork Pass, if you're going to be in one of the more mountainous areas, you're going to need to calculate for the slope on that, because we need the direct horizontal dimensions, not the basic map of the earth, so to speak. But you're going to need something to measure with. Bring your cameras, extra memory cards, extra batteries again, and you're going to need something for to take your field notes on. If you bring bring a couple of pieces of paper, just staple them to the back of your lease application, staking materials, whatever that works, great. I really like those Write in the Rain books. They're pretty handy. You don't have to worry about them getting wet, getting covered in snow or, whatever, bug guts, the whole bit. But bring backups for everything. You are going to need something to brush your boundary with anyway, and you're also going to need something to flag to flag your boundary, brush the lines, and all that. You don't necessarily need a chainsaw. So, in East Fork Pass, your chainsaw is not going to do you any good. In the ENIAC dough stock area, there you're going to have some big trees. You don't have to cut when you're brushing down your lines. We'll cover this. You don't have to cut all the trees down anyway. There, we just need line of sight. When you're brushing your line, if there's anything larger than 4 inches in diameter along that path, just flag it up and keep on going. That's fine. So my favorite tool is up here in the upper right, and it's called a Sandvik. Anyway, SANDVIK or SANVIK, or otherwise known as a Swede axe. Anyway, it is a fantastic tool for limbing and brushing. I love that thing. It's great. But yeah, so you are going to need some way to you're going to need to either bring out your corner posts. So you're going to have to make your own, prepare them in advance, bring out a 4x4 or something, or you're going to need to square off the native vegetation. So that's where a chainsaw could come in really handy, is for basically lopping off a tree at about 6 feet high and squaring it up anyway for there. So if you're just going to use native vegetation, but other than that, you really don't necessarily need a chainsaw. But yeah, so you're going to need something for corner posts. I would recommend, so for folks that are in East Fork Pass, you're definitely going to need to bring out some lath or something to actually mark your property boundary. If you're going to be covering, because most of the area is pretty low vegetation, you need to be able to mark it out for snow load. So that's a great way to do that. For ENIAC dough stock, you probably don't need to worry about that. However, it's not a bad idea to bring some lath with you if a portion of your parcel is going to be covering an area that's going to be not very wooded, like, kind of an open, kind of meadowy area. Sticking lath out there partway along the way to kind of see, so you can show where your boundary is going to be a big thing. So it's good to carry some of that out there. You're going to need something for your nameplates. We'll cover how to make them. Lots and lots of flagging tape. So bring plenty. And then of course, back to anything that's going to keep you warm and safe and comfortable, right? I highly recommend bringing some communication equipment out in the field with you, and definitely filing a kind of float plan or trip plan with somebody, kind of back in civilization a bit. All right, so there's all sorts of places where you can get this. This is not remotely an exhaustive list. Anyway, if you're trying to find something, you can't find it, feel free to contact us. We've got a lot of experience trying to find these things. We can certainly help you out if needed. All right, so preparing the materials for staking, you need to know how to use your GPS. So as noted earlier, that boundary coordinate diagram, that has the coordinates listed in degrees, minutes, decimal seconds. If you notice on the photo in this GPS, it says DDMMSS.S. So that's degrees, minutes, seconds, and then decimal seconds, right? So figure out how in your GPS to change that, because you might, if you're going to be planning in advance, you might need to take information, the coordinate information from a survey plat or from the boundary coordinate diagram, and plug that information in there. So you're going to need to know how to change that. If you change your settings in your GPS to where you can plug in that coordinate and then you swap it back, it's going to automatically recalculate that coordinate from whatever datum or whatever coordinate format you originally plugged it in at. So practice with how to put in waypoints and how to call those waypoints back up and navigate to them. Another thing is the datum. So most consumer grade GPSs default to a datum of WGS84. A lot of the information you're going to be finding on the more modern survey plats and such, or like on the Alaska Mapper program, is going to be in the NAD83 datum. For our purposes, it really doesn't matter between NAD 83 and WGS 84. I mean, realistically, in most of Alaska, it's about a meter or so vertical distance. I mean, any horizontal, distance is, pretty negligible. And with that, I mean, it is, if everybody is in, within a meter or so, 3 feet or so, yeah, that's great. That's plenty good for us. But some of those materials that you find might be in NAD 27, which can be off by several hundred yards, depending on where you're at in the state. So make sure that when you're plugging it in, the coordinates that you are putting into your, the coordinates that you're putting in match what your settings are in your GPS, and then you can reset that later. When you are submitting your lease application, I highly encourage you to take a photo of your GPS settings so that, just we know we can look if we're plugging in the coordinates and something doesn't seem correct. If we know what you did and how it was set, then that helps us kind of recreate it and kind of ground truth that, kind of correct it for the way we're putting it. But yeah, so again, bring the user's manual out with you. Make sure you know how to use it, but I'd recommend bringing the user manual out with you just in case. But practice how to put in waypoints, call them back up again. A lot of the GPSs are capable of, well, first off, you can have a track in there. You can certainly submit your track. So if you're staking your parcel and you walk all the way around the boundary, give us that as well. A lot of modern GPSs are capable of measuring area as well. So if you can figure out how to do that on a GPS, you can, if you're planning on staking a 5-acre parcel, walk around your parcel and, maybe it's actually ended up with 8, something like that, so make sure you kind of have a good idea of what you had. But yeah, any of that information you can supply us at the end is going to be helpful. All right, so nameplates. You can go pretty low tech on your nameplates. Some people like to actually get a nice metal nameplate and they'll stamp it out ahead of time anyway, nice thick one, pre-drill it for the nails so you can actually attach it to your corner post. Otherwise, you can take a soda can or beer can or whatever, and you can just cut the ends off, cut it open, strip it out, and then you can emboss it with a ballpoint pen. So you just draw on it with a ballpoint pen, write all your information on there. But then you definitely need to draw back over that with a Sharpie or something, a permanent marker, so that it shows up in the photographs. That's one of the requirements that we have to be able to read your nameplates in the photograph. So you have to draw back over it. If you are going to be using a former beverage can, please, 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 please wash it very thoroughly. We have a lot of these things eaten off the corner post by bears every year. It happens. So make sure you wash it thoroughly before doing so. But have some way to attach it to the post, staples, nails, whatever. So prep them up if you wanted to. So once you get out in the field, selecting your site. So when you get out in the area, walk around the site, figure out what's going on in the area, right? There might be a stream out there, or a wetland or something like that that you didn't account for. Maybe it didn't show up on imagery, but get familiar with the area, get familiar with the surroundings. When you're selecting a site, kind of figure, so ultimately the goal for this one is you're probably going to want a property you're going to get out to and use. So, make sure it's going to be accessible for you. Figure out kind of how you plan to access it. If you're going to, if you're willing to walk in over land for some distance, great. If you're going to want to just pull your boat up and then basically just go right across the setback to the parcel, plan on the waterfront parcel. Figure out for what's going to be in your budget, and that base appraisal information, which we'll cover in advance or cover towards the end here. Figure out in advance kind of what you're willing to pay for anyway, and we'll kind of walk you through that. But and then reading through those supplemental staking instructions, they'll tell you what the setbacks are, what the reserved areas are. So you're going to figure out where easements are likely to be within your parcel, which is going to kind of help you, determine where within your parcel you can build, or more specifically where you cannot. Anyway, is the big thing there. So by all means, go out in the area, check it out, and walk around the area as much as you want, but do not mark or flag or in any way, mark that parcel prior to 8 a.m. on the day of staking, which is March 1st. No. All right, so when you're selecting it, it has to be within the project area. We cannot accept anything that's outside of that. It has to be within within acreage limits. We cannot convey you a parcel less than 5 acres or over 20 acres. That's set in statute. It has to be reasonably compact, so roughly square, rectangular, something like that. There are some situations to where we might, have to add a fifth corner or something like that to meander, over around topography or something. But we can certainly deal with that. It cannot exceed the 2-to-1 length width ratio requirement, which we covered. And then there's going to be anytime that you're going to be staking along a water body, it gets a little tricky. Anyway, so most water bodies are not straight, right? They've got curved boundaries where the river meanders, or where a lake or something like that curves. So You are not allowed to have more than 33% water frontage on a water body or a setback from a water body. So what that means is that is basically long side to the water. So if you're staking a rectangular rectangular parcel, a 5-acre parcel is roughly 330 feet by 660 feet. 20-acre parcel is 1,320 feet by 660 feet. So that means if you're staking 20-acre parcel, you can have that 1,320-foot boundary along the water body, right? And that's the maximum that you can, that maximum water frontage you can have. You also cannot have discontiguous water frontage, right? So you cannot, if there's a stream that kind of meanders around and you have this big kind of oxbow in there, you cannot stake across between the oxbow, kind of cutting off the peninsula, right? The other thing is if you have a public water body up behind you, anyway, you cannot have a, like, so case in point, there's places in Aniak, Dostock, to where you might have a water body that's, you might have, like whether it's Dostock Creek or Aniak River, somewhere in there, to where you have the water body that's in a strip of land behind it, and then there's a public water body, public lake out there, something like that, one of those ponds. So your parcel has to be either on the setback from Aniak River or Dostock Creek or on the pond, but not both. You cannot stretch your parcel between the two. It has to be contiguous water frontage on there. And then you cannot stake across any trails that are listed on there. In Aniak Dostock, there's not any trails identified as not staked. You cannot stake across. There's a couple of trails in East Fork Pass, or specifically the road and some easements and such there. But you are not allowed to stake across any public water body. So we touched on this a little bit earlier. A public water body is generically any water body that is 10 feet wide or wider for streams, or lakes and ponds that are 10 acres in size or larger. We've done our best to identify what those are. And in some cases, they, if they're anadromous fish streams or such, they're automatically considered public. So there might be some small ones out, specifically in East Fork Pass and portions of Aniak Dostock. But you cannot stake across those. If you come across a stream or a pond or something like that in the area that appears to be 10 feet wide or wider, or 10 acres in size or larger, use caution if you're going to try and stake across it, because if the surveyor goes out there and determines that to be a public water body, we're going to have to truncate your parcel at that water body, right? Anytime you're staking along a water body, if you're up to the water body, it's going to have a what we call a 127 easement by 30.05 127 Alaska statute. So there's going to be a 50-foot easement along that water body, right? All of your parcels have a 30-foot easement, a public access and utility easement along all boundaries. So if you're going to be staking, up to a water body that might be public, it's going to be effectively coincident with that 30-foot interior lot line easement, just extending 20 feet further back. But anyway, so when you're planning for this, plan on what the things you cannot stake stake across. Anytime that you are, so if there's any trails that are active in use at the time of staking, you are welcome to stake across them. However, there will be a 60-foot easement centered on that trail, so 30-foot either side of center line. So my recommendation is, if it's, if it works for you, just stake up to that trail and use that trail as a boundary. So that way that 60-foot easement is going to be coincident with your lot line easement, right? So just plan on that in advance. There's also section lines out there. All section lines are subject to 100-foot easement centered on that section line, 50-foot either side. You can stake across them as long as it's not a surveyed section line, which I don't think we have here outside of the boundaries, or a township boundary. You cannot stake across. But yeah, other than that, you can stake across the section lines, but you're going to have an easement on that section line, which means you cannot build within that easement. And we'll cover building during the lease period and such a little bit later. But be aware of those setbacks and reservations. Read those supplemental staking instructions and understand what those are. And we'll cover those in detail with each area. So generically, these are going to be the type of things that are going to cause us to have to reject a lease application and or send you back out into the field to redo it or do more work, right? So pay attention to these things. All right. So any questions at this point about going out and finding your parcel boundaries, researching the area, collecting all the materials, getting all that stuff ready to go? Anything in there? Yes.
We take it, we do all the stuff that's required, and then we bring it back and you go, hey, for some reason, this, this line is 35 feet too long or something. Is that something that we're gonna have to go back out into the field for, or can we just go, hey, chop it 35 feet short? Or make it look right on your map, and I'm happy with the placement.
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Depends. So it depends quite a bit. Generally speaking, for minor modifications, like something like 35 feet, something like that, that's typically not going to be a problem, right? So if it is like, so if you're staking, if you're going to the max, right? You're going for a 20-acre parcel and you stake it at 20.1 acres, it's probably not going to be a big deal. We can probably adjust that at the time of survey, right? If you're, so in that case, you're going, 660 by 1320. I mean, if you're 1,350 feet, yeah, we can probably adjust that. If you're 2,500 feet, if you're, approaching double the size or something like that, no, you're going to have to go back out and do that. Where it is that we cannot adjust that is going to be things that, I mean, if it is going to be a substantial change anyway to the location, dimensions, whatever of the parcel, or if that change is going to basically result in something that is going to be prohibitive for somebody else that's trying to stake, up next to it or whatever, right? So if we are going, so say for instance, if you were shooting for 5 acres and you end up at like 3 and you're right along a water body and there's other parcels, potentially going to be staked in the area, we're going to have you go out and correct that, because if you're going to go out and expand that parcel, if somebody stakes up next to you beforehand, before you expand it, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to expand to. So that would be something we would have to have you correct, as opposed to, doing it at the time of survey or something. All right. Any other questions? All right. So we are at 10:55. Let's take a brief 5-minute break and meet back up here at 11. We'll start back up again. And then, yeah, so there's a refreshment area just out at the end of the hallway to the right, restrooms through the 2 doors on the left. All right, I'm unmuting myself here. We're just chatting here for a second, but a question came up about success rate, and anyway, so yeah, to answer that question, generically speaking, within the program, there's on average amongst all areas, it's about 25% roughly in there, 30%. All areas combined. Some areas that are very accessible off the road system, we have 90% success rate there nearabouts, or a little lower. And then the very remote areas tend to have a lot less. So we've had some areas that are remote fly-in access with not a lot of vegetation, and we're looking at 10% or so. And then what was the next question on that? We were just, sorry, I blanked.
Oh, no, we were talking about like how people actually go out and stay.
Oh yeah, and how many people go out and stake? Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so but yeah, so with this, oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So because of since it's a pretty low barrier to entry with a $25 application fee, in years past, the program was set up such that so if we have 30 authorizations for an area, we draw 30 names, and all 30 people get to go out and stake. And then if they chose not to stake, then they could relinquish their application. And as soon as we got a relinquishment, we would send that out in order of drawing for the alternates anyway. So we used to do it that way. But one of the problems is a lot of people they might have the best of intentions, but they wait until 2 weeks before the end of the staking period and they say, I don't think I'm going to do it. Here's my relinquishment. Well, there's not enough time to get, for somebody to prepare to go out and do that. So what we did for the last couple of offerings, we modified that such that the staking area is traditionally broken up. If we have more applicants than authorizations, we break up the staking period into basically the winners period and then alternates period. So if we have 30 authorizations to stake, we draw 30 winners. All of them get to go out between, I think like this year, it was going to be March 1st and July at some point, I think. And so those folks could go out. If those individuals, the winners, did not stake during that time by July 1 or whatever the date was, they would lose that authorization, and we would give that to the alternates. And so they would have between July and September to stake, so a much longer period of time. But in this case, since we had fewer applicants than authorizations for these areas, everybody has that full window. So we don't have the 2 staking periods. So we'll cover that a little bit here momentarily. All right. So there was another question that came on here when we were out, and so one of the folks here in person has so they have an authorization. The wife has an authorization, and so yeah, they're eligible for 2 parcels anyway. So yeah, both parties can stake 20-acre parcels. And since we're talking about that, it's a good opportunity to bring up authorized agents. So you can have somebody stake for you if you would like to do so, or in that particular case, like you could stake for your wife. With that said, if somebody is going to be using an authorized agent, So ultimately, you are responsible for the work that your agent does anyway. So your agent can go out there and they can, they can put in the post and brush and flag the boundaries and do all that. But you ultimately are the one who's responsible for signing the paperwork and turning it all in and saying, yes, this is all complete and everything else. So, but we are going to ask for that agent information so that we can contact them if we have questions about how it was done, kind of idea. So, for information there. All right. So any questions or anything come up over the break? Anything? Okay. All right. So we'll get right back into it. So just kind of a refresher about kind of the stuff that we've covered at this point. So, at this point you've got, so you've been to the stakers resources page, you've read through all of that information. You've read through the staking instructions, information, the supplemental staking instructions specific to your area. You've read through the lease application, you know what's expected of you. You printed out all of those things along with the checklist, and you are throwing that in with the rest of your gear to get prepared to go out in the field, which is going to be, you're going to need the flagging, you're going to need some means of brushing your parcel boundaries, you're going to need nameplates for your corner posts, you're going to need corner posts if you're not going to be using native vegetation, or if you're in East Fork Pass. And then, so you're going to need some way to measure your parcel. You're going to need your GPS. You need to be familiar with how to use it, how to put in waypoints and all that kind of stuff. And you should have done some research at this point as to how to get out into, or basically kind of where your parcel is going to be, right? So figuring out kind of what size parcel you want it to be, where the location is going to be. I recommend that before you go out staking, pick out a couple of sites and even, maybe map them in your GPS to get approximate, recognizing that whatever the conditions are in the field rule. So you might have to adjust that, that parcel for if the water body's meandered, if you find a trail that you didn't know was there, something like that. All right, so you're out in the field now. So you've selected your site, you're there, in the field, and now you have to locate a reference point. So ultimately, what we are looking for a reference point is going to be ideally a monument. And so, why is that not working? It's not advancing the slides. Give me just a second. Pardon me. There we go. All right. All right. So you're looking for a monument. So apologies to the folks online. Can't see just what I'm looking at, but I'm showing an example of basically that top left photo here. So this is going to be this is a survey monument. This is going to be a state of Alaska primary survey monument. So for any of those private parcels that are out in the area that were staked in one of the prior offerings on the state offerings are going to be a monument just like this. For the like the boundary coordinates anyway, for the corners where the sections are actually surveyed, they're going to be much more like this monument down here in the lower left, which is going to be a smaller brass cap monument. And it's going to be, instead of sitting on like a 2-inch post, it's going to be sitting on like a 1-inch diameter post. And it's typically going to be sitting pretty low to the ground. So, with that, each one of these is going to have a series of accessories to it anyway. And if you look on one of those survey plats, so if you're looking at, say, for instance, the ENIAC Dostock, the original offering survey plat, if you look, there's going to be a description of each one of those monuments, and it's going to show what the accessories are. So the accessories are going to be like this picture on the right, which is a bearing tree tag. So it's a tag. It's probably 6 inches by 4 inches, something like that. Bright yellow. It's going to be nailed on a tree. If you walk up there and look, it is going to give you the distance and the direction from that tag to the monument, right? And these are all set in pretty close proximity to the monument. So I'm going to try something here real quick. Well, actually, we'll get to that when we get into some of the other stuff here. In the photos, I was gonna flip on the camera here, but we'll do that in a minute. So when you're trying to find a reference point, first off, not all the some of the coordinates, some of the monuments that are on those surveys are going to have a coordinate for them, not all of them. So, but you can go into Alaska Mapper and you can get pretty close by using that coordinate tool there anyway to see where it is, save that, and you can get pretty close. And then instead of just looking on the ground, look up in the trees, because these are going to be typically above the snow level as well, and so you can find them. So when you get there, I mean, a GPS is probably going to, I mean, the best case scenario, even if you plug in that coordinate, it's going to get you pretty close. It might not get you right on top of it. So my recommendation is if you get up to that corner pole or that bearing tree tag, and it says that, that is at, we'll say 12 feet at, whatever, it's 12 feet away at 37 degrees. put your back up against that bearing tree tag and then look at, what did I say, 12 feet? Whatever, yeah. So look at whatever distance that is 12 feet away, and it should be somewhere in there. These are set up to where they're facing that monument. Now, sometimes the tree falls over, sometimes it can kind of twist as it grows, whatever. But if you actually look on that, you can take the direction off of that tells you where to go. So it's going to be 37 degrees, pull out your compass and just, find 37 degrees. That's going to be in true anyway, the way it's listed there. So if it's not adjusted for declaration, you could do the math anyway, but that should lead you right to it. And typically there's going to be about 3 of those bearing tree tags for each one of these monuments. So what we're going to ask you to do is to find a monument first and foremost, anyway, out here. So look at those survey plats, kind of figure out what's in the area. For most of the areas within East Fork Pass or Antioch Dostock, there's going to be a monument fairly nearby. Anyway, so find that monument, throw some flagging on it. You're going to need to take a photo of it. A little trick for taking a photo is if you actually take some dirt and you rub it into the top, where it's embossed, it kind of sticks in there a little bit. It shows up a lot better in a photograph. Another option that you can do is you can take, kind of go take the old grade school trick and throw a piece of paper on there and rub it over with a pencil, doing whatever they call it, an embossing or whatever, anyway, for that. And that'll give you a really good picture of it. Or if all else fails, just draw a circle and then basically kind of recreate what's drawn on there, just redraw it yourself anyway. So, we just need the information on that monument so we can read it so we know exactly where that is that you're starting from. Because we're going to use this as a means to guide the surveyor from that known point, because all those monuments out there are known, from that known point to your parcel. So we can find your parcel, we can locate it. And that's going to be used as the basis for the legal description that's going to give the legal description of your lease, that area that you have the sole and exclusive right to use during that lease period and ultimately going to be purchasing. So anyway, this is primarily what we're going to ask you to find. If you are way off from a monument, anyway, from a survey monument or something in the area, to the point that whatever information you give us is going to be garbage, because it's not going to give us adequate, a very accurate distance or direction, you can create your own reference point. And so what we're looking for in that case is a permanent prominent point, right? So that's going to be something that is going to be there 2 to 3 years from when you're staking your parcel, when the surveyor is going to be out there, that it's going to be very easy to identify. And so in the case of like the Antioch Dostock area, there might be a tree that is on the at the confluence of basically the Antioch River and Dostock Creek or whatever on the north bank of the river, and you select a tree, you flag it up, you put your corner post on there, and with your name and all that information on there, sorry, not a corner post, name tag on there with your information that this is your reference point, something like that, because it should be easy enough for the surveyor to find the confluence of Antioch River and Dostock Creek, right? Anyway, if you're going to be doing something like that, make sure you're not selecting a tree that's overhanging the river, that's going to fall into the river within a couple of years, something like that. But some permanent prominent point. I've got to share this one because this is hilarious. When we did the first offering of East Fork Pass, we had somebody out there that their reference point was the tree. And we were looking at that like, that is not a permanent prominent point. Sure enough, they found a tree. There was actually like a 12-foot tall spruce tree growing out in East Fork Pass. It was amazing. Anyway, so and that was kind of a permanent prominent point because that is the one tree that's out there. But that's kind of an extreme situation. So we're looking for something that's going to be there within a few years, something we can easily direct folks to find that. All right. So you've established your where your reference point is. Now you're going to put in your corner posts, right? So when you're selecting what you're going to use for your corner post, a couple of things to think of. It needs to be, about 4 to 6 feet high, something like, to where you can, see it. But it has to be up above the snow level, so you can actually see it, year round, right? It's going to have to be highly visible anyway, so you're going to need to paint it up bright pink, bright orange, something like that. If you're prepping them in advance, or just take a can of spray paint out there to spray paint the tree that you've cut down for your corner post. So if you're using native vegetation, just lop off a tree at about whatever 4 foot, 6 foot high, somewhere in there, square it off, the best of your ability, or at least blaze it up, something like that. Paint it bright orange, bright pink, whatever, or flag it up with a lot of flagging to make it highly visible, right? But it's going to need to be something that's wide, so not a piece a lath, not a carcinite post. If you're familiar with carcinite posts, those fiberglass posts that they're tall and they're bright orange, but they're 3 feet wide, but they're, you know, what, 3/8 of an inch thick, something like that. Not terribly visible if you're looking at them from the edge, right? So needs to be something that's highly visible, and it's going to need to be sturdy, because, you know, if you're going out there and, you know, bears are inspecting it, rubbing up against it, whatever, anyway, it needs to be able to withstand the wind and, you know, wildlife and the whole bit. So it's going to need to last up there. This is something that you're going to have to maintain and make sure that those are out and standing up throughout the duration of your lease period. So if you're going to be bringing out your own corner post, so if you're going to use like a 4x4 post or something like that, great. There's a lot of, you know, great ways to do that. Some folks that will drill out a hole in the bottom, and they basically take a long piece of rebar, and they will pound that rebar into the ground and put the corner post on top of that. You can, so for folks that are going to be staking out in the wintertime, you can generally get a, you know, pound a piece of rebar in frozen ground, you know, if you sharpen up the edge of it, the end. Other times, you know, people take those T-posts, those fence posts, they'll drive those into the ground and then attach the post to that. But just make sure you're attaching it securely to where it's gonna, you know, it's gonna stay on there. So something probably just a little bit better than duct tape and baling wire. So all right, so you're gonna need to put in your corner posts, and then you're gonna need to brush and flag your boundaries. So if you can see in this photo here, so this is what we're looking for on a brushed and flagged line, right? So if you can see this, you can see down that line, you can see basically clear line of sight. It's been limbed up, you know, whatever, about 6 feet or so out there to where you can clearly see. But I mean, that you haven't, it's not a 5 foot wide trail. It's not, I mean, you're not going to take an ATV or something down there. You know, it's not mowed down. You don't have to take all the vegetation down. You just need line of sight. And you're going to need to, you just need to see that flagging every 10 to 20 feet or so down that line. So that's ultimately all we're looking for. So you're clearing out the low brush that's, you know, that's in the way. You're clearing it out about 6 feet high to where you have visibility down that line. If there's a tree that is over 4 inches in diameter along the line, that's fine. And just leave it there anyway. And then, you know, flag it up and then just keep on going. Specifically, we are not looking for a big blazed, or I mean, a big cleared wide trail when we're out there, because there's a good chances that, you know, your parcel boundary might move a little bit, your line might move, or it's not going to be completely straight. There, you know, we don't want, if we have to make adjustments to your parcel, we don't want either that big wide now brushed trail effectively going either through your parcel somewhere or being outside of it. Just all we're looking for is line of sight. But it's going to have to last for a couple of years to where the surveyor can find it, and also other stakers are going to be able to see it when they're out there as well. All right. So East Fork Pass, folks, you're going to have to get a little bit creative. So you're probably going to have to bring out some lath and probably pound lath in along the line periodically where you're out there. So something like down here in the lower left corner. So lath, flagging, things like that. What you don't want is not pin flags, right? Those little ones that are like that. We don't want those things. Those things are going to get covered up in the snow, and they're not going to be all that visible to begin with. Anyway, so you're going to need something to mark out over those wide areas in East Fork Pass that are not very well vegetated. And likewise in Aniak Dostock, if you're going to be passing a meadow or something like that, have some means of, you know, maybe you know, either putting out lath or something like that. You know, if you have that, like that pucker brush that's, you know, up there about 3 feet high, that's fine. You can just tie flagging to that. It's, you know, plain sufficient. So, all right. When you're doing the flagging, make sure you're flagging every 10 to 20 feet. Make sure you have that good line of sight from flag to flag. And when you're taking photos of that, make sure we can see that flagging in the photos. That's one of the things we commonly have to send folks out for, is that maybe they did all the work, but when they were taking the photos, we can't see any flagging in the photos, or we can't see sufficient flagging. So use colors that are very bright. So bright orange, bright pink, something like that. Avoid green and avoid blue. Anyway, even yellow doesn't show up all that much. My recommendation is pink or orange, right? You know, so that those bright fluorescent colors. Anyway, yeah. And then for East Fork Pass, for when you're putting in your your corner posts and such, you know, maybe in addition to the like rebar or whatever, you know, you just put some rock cairns up around it to kind of help support it in some of those harder open ground areas there as well. All right. So it needs to be last for 3 to 4 years. It needs to be above the snow, just like the corner post. You need to be able to see where that's going to be at. All right, so now you're going to measure and describe your parcel. So again, this is that pole measure. You don't need to have something this fancy. You can do you can just use that knotted rope technique, but you're going to need some means by which to measure out your parcel. Avoid something that's going to be, you know, stretchy or something like that, because we want to get as much of an accurate measurement as you can. If you were going to be, for the folks that are principally in East Fork Pass, this probably isn't going to matter for Aniak Dostock too much. But if you're going to be on hills or something, you don't necessarily, you don't, we're not looking for the kind of map of the earth distance, right? So not going down the hill. So if you look at this kind of schematic down here on the lower right, you know, that red line that kind of follows the contours of the earth is going to be longer than the horizontal distance of all that. So you can do a measurement like this, measure it out as straight as possible that way. You know, or if you get yourself something like an inclinometer, you can measure the distance. And then if you can sight from basically one corner post to the next going up the hill, you can do the trigonometry on it. Or in some cases, you can even get like range finding GPSs that'll, range finders, excuse me, that'll calculate the horizontal distance. It's like a good, like long range shooting rangefinder, excuse me, something like that. But anyway, if you can figure out the angle and the distance, you can figure out what that horizontal distance is, which is actually what we're looking for on that. All right, so then we are going to ask for the direction from your reference point to your corner number 1, your corner number 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 back to the beginning. And we're looking for both the direction for that, so cardinal direction such as north, south, east, west, or ordinal direction, northeast, southeast, southwest, etc. And we're also going to be looking for the azimuth for that. And so what we mean by the azimuth is basically, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, the bearing, the heading, whatever, but the compass reading from your compass from one corner post to the next. So just so set your your compass right up on the top of your corner post and sight down there. And give us the value for that. So we are looking for, we are looking for this in true north. And so your compass is going to give you magnetic, it's going to give you the magnetic bearing for there because it's going to point towards the magnetic pole. So you can adjust for declination if you so choose. So the declination is going to be located right here on your staking map, kind of the lower center of the staking map. So you can adjust your compass for declination. I'm not going to get into how to do this and all that because oftentimes people get confused. I will just say if you know how to adjust for declination, adjust it. If you don't know how to adjust for declination, don't. Just, tell us what you did, or send us a photo of the bezel of your compass to see just, what it was adjusted to. Because ultimately, if we know how it was measured, then we can use that to basically kind of correct it. And so we're getting actually good data that's actually going into that. All right. So what you're ultimately going to be collecting is that information from the direction, and so the direction and the azimuth from your reference point to your corner number 1, and then the direction and azimuth from your corner number 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and then back to your corner number 1, or if there's other ones in the interim. We're also going to need the distance from your corner or from a reference point to number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so we'll get into filling out all that information on the application here momentarily. So a little bit about your GPS. So there's a couple of tricks for a GPS that'll probably make it a little bit easier. So first off, your GPS is going to have to warm up a little bit, quote unquote, right? So in East Fork Pass, you don't have to worry about a tree canopy. So this probably isn't going to, so the canopy bit isn't going to matter to you. But whenever you get down to the field, so, you pull up on your boat, whatever, pull out of the plane, whatever you're doing, get out and just fire up your GPS and just throw it on top of your backpack while you're loading up the rest of the stuff you're going to be doing, right? So get ready for that. The longer it actually has a fix, the more accurate it is going to be. So likewise, you get up to your corner post, and while you're getting out all your tools and everything else, just have it sitting on top of your corner post, just calculating there for a period of time. And then once you're ready to actually get that coordinate, just mark that coordinate right there after it's been sitting for a bit in that one spot. It's going to give you a lot better data. Likewise, for folks in ENIAC, if you're going to be, if you're out there trying to get a coordinate underneath the canopy, it oftentimes, if you're having a hard time getting a good signal, if you walk out into an open area and let it sit and calculate and get a good signal, it tends to hold on to that signal a little bit better if you just walk back into that point and then capture it. So anyway, just a couple of tricks. Anytime that you're taking a coordinate for your reference point, corners, or we're going to talk about building site here in a minute, for any of that stuff, I highly recommend that you take a photo of that coordinate right there, anywhere, sort of your screen right there that shows the waypoint name and the coordinates, so you have it right there. So, redundancy, right? So yeah, take a photo of that, and then also take notes about it. Make sure you have good notes. We oftentimes get, in situations where folks come back in, they're trying to figure out which waypoint was which. So make sure you take good field notes so you can keep track of all that information. All right, so from there, we're going to get into describing your parcel. But does anybody have any questions as to how to actually go about staking the parcel? So finding the reference point, collecting the coordinate information, location information for your reference point, measuring the distance and direction from your reference point to your corner number one, and then placing your corner posts, brushing and flagging in between your corner posts, and then getting the measurement of the direction, azimuth, and distance between your reference point to corner number one, then 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and back to point of beginning. Any questions?
Wouldn't, if there's a reason why to move over, let's just say 30 feet would just be silly, right? 20, but is there?
Yeah.
Are you accepting that line that they've already brushed as your future line?
So the question is if you're staking up next to another parcel or another stake parcel can use the same line, and yes, absolutely. And I think we'll get into this in a little bit, but when you're staking adjacent to other parcels, you have to be up to that other parcel or a minimum of 330 feet away from that other parcel. And the reason being is we don't want to leave these like little random slivers of land in between. So you have to have that 330 feet allows for another 5-acre parcel. So with that, yeah, absolutely. You can share either the entirety of that line or a portion of that line as necessary, right? So if you're staking a 5-acre parcel next to a 20-acre parcel, yeah, you can use that existing line all the way down there, and then just part way through, you're going to put your own corner post on that line, right? Yeah, in fact, once you get to the corner post, if you're going to be staking like 2 parcels at the same time, if you're staking adjacent parcels, yeah, where they share that boundary or where they share corner posts, you can even use the same corner post. Just put your nameplate on that same corner post. Anyway, and so yeah, it might be your corner number 1 and their corner number 4, whatever. That's fine. Absolutely. So yeah, you don't need to. I mean, it saves a whole lot of work if you can, piggyback off of somebody else's that way. So. Right. And
going back out there to redo something.
It sounds like you need to do your own, make sure that line is correct. Not verifying that other person is correct.
Right, but yeah, so but at that point, you wouldn't want to make a little pie shape or anything weird, thinking that they're,
yeah, and so the question or the discussion was ensuring that the other line, that if you're sharing a line with somebody, that the other line is correct. And so by and large, yeah, I mean, so if there is other flagging, I mean, you're pretty much, if there's another brush flag line already out in the field, you're pretty much kind of beholden to using that if it's somebody else's line, because presumably they staked first, and now you, as being the junior staker, will kind of cover the hierarchy on that stuff in a little bit. But yeah, you're kind of beholden to using that. With that said, it is like when we get around to adjudicating it, and like if we have to make adjustments to that, to where, say, for instance, they were coming off the river and they did not stake perpendicular to the river, so we're going to have to rotate that around. We'll cover how we make those adjustments to that if there's 2 parcels involved. So yeah, we'll cover that. Generally speaking, I mean, so it depends on what it is. I mean, like if you stake, if you were going for a 5-acre parcel, you end up with 3, you're going to have to go back out and and do that to restake that portion of your parcel. But a lot of the small adjustments like that we can do at the time of survey.
I'm guessing the survey.
Right, and they don't actually. So so most of the time these are going to be surveyed by GPS, so they are not going to be brushing line of sight between them. So the brush and flag lines are so marking out the boundary of your parcel is necessary for marking out for other stakers who are going to be staking in the field when you're out there, so they can see that you have an interest in this parcel because you will be or have applied for the lease of this land, right? It also helps notify the surveyors of basically where the parcel is, so they can make sure that they are surveying the appropriate parcel for you, right? But once it's actually surveyed, I mean, that is the legal boundaries are set, and it is point-to-point distance between those monuments. They're not going to actually brush it out. If you want to, like, I mean, for the purpose of controlling your property, and you don't want people accidentally wandering on your property, then absolutely, you can certainly brush out that line and maintain that line, but that's up to you at that point. It's not a requirement. It doesn't have to be done. And yeah, the surveyor is not going to rebrush the boundary. So, all right. Any other questions? All righty. All right. So now we're going to get into the staking questionnaire, which is effectively, I mean, this is the fill in the blank meets and bounds property description for your parcel that you're going to be leasing. So we're going to ask you a couple different things. So first off, so the first page of the legal of the lease application is pretty much going to be like your vital statistics, who you are, and all that stuff. When you staked and all that stuff, right? So we're going to ask in this case, did you adjust your compass for a declination? Just yes or no. It doesn't have to be adjusted. Just let us know what you did so we can, we can make adjustments for it as necessary. We are going to ask if you, what your settings were on your GPS, right? If you are unfamiliar with that and you don't quite understand what we're asking, this is where that photo of your GPS settings comes in. And so just so we know exactly how you capture that information. If you have somebody else operating your GPS for you, that's pretty savvy with the GPS. If they were the ones who collect that information, if you give us their information, we can ask them those questions anyway. It's just to make it a little bit easier. So as long as we have a contact for figuring out what was done. We're going to ask when you staked your parcel, and this is going to come into play for the seniority bit, and which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the date that you staked your parcel, and then we're going to ask for the location, the PLSS, Public Land Survey System, or the Meridian Township range and section in which your parcel was staked. And so that's what this is going to be. So on the staking map on each one of these, you're going to have the township. So what that means is that S016N056W, what that stands for is Seward Meridian, Township 16 North, Range 56 West, right? And then, so assuming you stake down here, just below that circle, that is going to be in section 4. So the township is going to be 16 North, the range is going to be 56 West, and it's section number 4 in that case. So that's where you can find that information for those. So then we're going to ask about the acreage anyway. So how many acres is your parcel roughly? Anyway, be as accurate as you can on that one. And then generically, anywhere within the parcel, this is just describing the parcel generically. Anywhere within the parcel, did you stake over, next to, or within 330 feet of any of these things, right? So if you're, if there's any parcels nearby, we need to know, we need to know what they are, because we might have to make adjustments for that. Again, you're not allowed to stake within, so you have to stake up to or 330 feet away from other private parcels, right? If there's any other improvements like airstrip, trespass capital, whatever, we need to know about that, because some things, like you cannot stake within 330 feet of any improvements that are like outside of private property, because it could be a trespass cabin, or it could be like a historical cabin or something like that that we didn't know about. So we need to know what's out there. For if there's any trails in the area, if there's so you're not allowed to stake over any serialized trails that are on the maps. So for like the Aniak Dostock folks, there's nothing out there. For East Fork Pass, there's a couple of easements out there in the road, which they have their own setbacks and such on those. Other trails that are out there in the area that are active and in use at the time of staking, you're going to have a 60-foot easement on that trail if it goes through your parcel. So my recommendation is probably put your parcel adjacent to it. Yes.
Question on that.
Yeah.
A trail?
No.
Or somebody brought a, ATV type?
Yeah, so like ATV trail, snow machine trail, something like that. Anyways, is ultimately what we're looking at. So now, so with that said, anyway, in that, if you are so between now and when the parcel actually gets surveyed, so if you're going to go out there and so you can, we're going to take a step away from this stuff here for a second. So if you're going to go out there, you're going to lease your parcel, and you're going to go out there, build a cabin, and start using it right away. Great, fine, fantastic. You can totally do that. We're going to have some recommendations about the cabin building stuff there, but you're welcome to do so. If you're going to do that, I would probably recommend you kind of hold off on building any major trail networks through your parcel. If it just goes up and into your parcel and stops, that's fine. You're not going to have an easement on that, right? Because clearly that's just yours. If, however, you decide to go out and you build a big trap line trail that goes up, right up there next to your cab and then continues on through there, when the surveyor gets out there like 2 to 3 years from now and is looking at that and says, hey, it looks like this trail was probably active and in use at the time of staking, you're going to end up with that easement running right through the center of your parcel. right? And so it's tough. Now, we will not, for something like that, it wouldn't be something that's going to be, you know, like, so it's not going to affect your appraisal. It's not going to be something that, I mean, we wouldn't do that if it was what we call tenant improvements. So if we can clearly identify that, yes, you did this, like, I mean, this was your trail to begin with, and it just goes through there to basically like the little hunting spot on the backside of your parcel, that's one thing. But that's often going to be really hard to tell for the surveyor to tell that, yes, this did not exist 3 years ago, right? So, so my recommendation is be very judicious on how you build the trails, you know, whatever through your parcel, particularly anyway, prior to surveying. Anyway, there. But yeah, so you're welcome to stake over active trails anyway, but you would have a 60-foot easement in that case. Water body. So we want to know if you are, if you have crossed a water body, if you have a water body within your parcel, or if there's a water body within 330 feet of your parcel. If it is a public water body, so again, streams 10 feet wide or wider, or lakes or ponds 10 acres in size or larger, that's considered a public water body, and you have to be up to or 330 feet away from that. If it is and you just can't stake over them, or you can, you cannot, stake over those public water bodies, as it were. If you come across a stream that is kind of marginally 10 feet wide, I would seriously consider just using that as a boundary, as opposed to staking over it. But as a public water body, you have to be either up to or 330 feet away from it. So there's that. This applies to the setbacks from water bodies as well. So in the case of Aniak Dostock, there is a 200-foot setback from the Aniak River. And as a setback, you have to be up to or 330 feet away from that setback. And then for Dostock Creek, it's 100 feet. So you have to be up to or 330 feet away from that. That also, and so that also accounts for water frontage as well. So 33% maximum water frontage along the setback, anyway, as it were, because that's as close as you can get to the water body in that case. And that counts as, again, discontiguous water frontage, you have to be either on that setback from that one or the public water body that's behind it or whatever, but not both. Make sense? All right. So just describe anything that's around the area. Then we want to know how you're going to be accessing your parcel, right? So in the case of Aniak Dostock, it might be pretty simple. You're just going to be going up, depending on where you're staying. It might be basically just run up the Aniak River, and then 200 feet across state land to your parcel, right? Just describe that wherever it's going to be. We're going to ask you to show that on the sketch plat and also take a photo of it, right? So we have an idea where that's going to be. For East Fork Pass, it's going to be critically more important that we want to know how you're going to be accessing your parcel, because a lot of wide open land out there. We want to make sure that once your parcel is surveyed and as other people are staking in the area, that you still have that you can maintain access to your parcel. Anyway, out there, if you're kind of restricted in where you have to go to get to that. So then we're gonna so once you've described your parcel, we're going to get into the actual staking bit, right? Describe your reference point. Did you locate a monument? If so, what type of monument it is, right? Give us the information on that, the location of it, Meridian Township Range, give us the coordinate. We're going to ask for photos of that, of the monument that you took, or the photos of the monument, or the if you created your own reference point. So describe that fully as to what you did, and what your reference point is and where it's at. Then you're going to get into that distance, the distance, direction, and azimuth from your reference point to your corner number one. All right, so we're going to need a coordinate for that, and then we're going to need a couple of photos. So once we get to your reference, or to your post there, sorry. All right, and Justin, I'm going to need a hand with this to see if you can see me on this one. For folks online, pardon me for a second. I'm going to kick on my webcam here real quick so we can do a little bit of demonstration. All right. Okay. Try clicking on that box, and I think it might expand it.
Yeah, so if everyone clicks on the one of the box in the top left.
Okay.
It should expand.
All right, so if you click on the box in the top left, it should expand. So I'm just going to give it a little demonstration here for a second of what we're looking at for photographs, because there are going to be some very specific photographs that we're looking for. So we're going to use this for folks that didn't see. This is the monument that we were talking about before. This is a Alaska State Land Survey monument on the larger 2-inch post, but we're going to use that as an example for if that was going to be our corner post. So assuming that this is going to be our corner post number one, for instance, right? And so now from this direction heading down this way is we're going to go to corner number two. And our coordinate number 4 is going to be going back from this direction, right? So we're going to need a couple of very specific photos once we get here. So you're going to get it right up on that corner post, which should be a good 4 feet high or so. But we're going to need a close-up of that nameplate. So we need to be able to see the nameplate, see all the writing that's on there, make sure that that's adequately visible, right? Then you're going to step back and you're going to take a photo just a few feet back from that, taking an area view to where we can kind of see your corner post and kind of in its surrounding and kind of what it looks like right there, right? Then we're going to need 2 more photos, from that corner post. So we're going to need one that you're standing at the corner post for your corner number 1, looking down towards your corner number 3, right? And then we're going to need one other one to where you're standing at that corner post and you're looking from corner number 1 back towards corner number 4, right? So in some of the staking materials and other stuff, you might see what people oftentimes refer to as flipping game signs in the photos. What that is that a great way to keep track of which photos are which, so you can see what that is folks will stand here, and if this is corner number 1, you're standing here with one finger up here, indicating that you're corner number 1, and corner number 4 is back here behind you, right? So if, like, my computer is actually taking the photo, or likewise back here, it's corner number 1, corner number 2 is back over here. So, all right, does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, so those are going to be some very specific photos that we're going to need for that. So, all right, now I'm going to kick that back off, make it a little bit easier for the presentation here. Thank you. All right, so area view, nameplate, and then looking down your brush lines. And then at this point, it's also a great idea to take a photo of your GPS when it's sitting there, right? We were talking about you're going to need to get that coordinate. Just snap a photo of your screen that has that coordinate information right on it. All right, so you're going to describe your corner post, and that's going to be, you're going to tell us if it is a 4x4 post, if you took a birch tree or a spruce tree or whatever it was, squared it up, however you did that, give us all that information. Then you're going to get into the direction. So cardinal or ordinal direction, north, southeast, whatever, from your corner number 1 to your corner number 2, or your next corners as you go along. The distance and the azimuth for those. And then anywhere along that line, did you cross any of these features? Did you cross a stream? Did you cross a trail? Did you cross another boundary for something else, right? And then you're going to take any photos of any of those things. Take a photo of the trail, the stream, something like that. So we have all the information so we can, best make sure, basically what to expect with that. Describe the photos, and then you're going to basically go through all the way back to the point of beginning. So do that for all 4 of your corners, or 5. There's a spot for a 5th and 6th corner if you need it. It's pretty rare that you do because they need to be relatively square rectangular parcels. So go through all that. Then we're going to ask you to, and this is completely optional, but we're going to ask you for the quote unquote building site, right? All we're looking for in this one is the part of the parcel that is most important to you, right? So if that is where you want to put a cabin, or if that's where you want to put, like, whatever, your moose hunting stand or your personal Zen reflection point, whatever on the parcel, doesn't matter. If you have a very particular part of that parcel that's important to you, let us know what that is. If we have to make adjustments to that parcel, we will do everything we can to make sure that that stays within the parcel, and then that's in a part of the parcel that's still usable. So, try and keep that away from a parcel boundary where you're going to have a 30-foot easement, so you can still build on it, for instance, something like that. So that's why we're asking for that. If you want to put a corner post out there or mark it with the lath or something like that, by all means, and give us a photo of it, whatever. The more information we have, the more we can actually work with right there. All right, so once you've gone through that, we're going to ask you to map and describe your parcel. So there's 2 different ways. So one over here on the left is going to be the sketch plat, where we're going to ask you to draw out your parcel and label that distance, direction, azimuth, all along from reference point to all the corners, the whole bit. And then on the right, we're going to ask you to draw in your parcel on the staking map and submit that with your application. So for starters, you'll note on here that there's the scale is for a 1 mile. It's a 1 mile by 1 mile square, right? So going to try and draw to scale. That doesn't matter so much if you're actually going outside of that scale. So if this is going to be, like, we'll say quarter mile by quarter mile, something like that, by all means, just let us know what it is, or half mile by half mile, fun or doable. Anyway, so when you're drawing that, we're going to ask for a couple different things. So draw your parcel on there. draw where your reference point is, and then label either along the line or with a leader line or something like that, the direction, so the distance, direction, and azimuth from your reference point to your corner number one. Then from your corner number one, the distance, direction, azimuth to corner number 2, 3, 4, back to the point of beginning, right? Put on there the any nearby parcels or any other features. So in this case, it has like there's the adjacent parcel. It shows that there's this 20-foot wide stream over here. So it's, probably it's gonna be a public stream, and that's on the other side of that parcel. This one has the setback, labeled, something like that, right? This one also has that building site on there. And then draw your proposed access. So this shows where the access was, but it doesn't actually show how they're actually getting from that unnamed trail to the parcel. But put that on your application. All right, and then there's going to be some good descriptions on how to do this in the staking instructions as well, for how to do that. All right, so at this point, you've gone through, you've done all the field work. So yeah, you've done all the field work. You got your reference point, your corner posts, all that. Now it's time for the photos. So now this is going to be, in theory, you'd be taking photos along the whole route, or along the whole process. But we're going to show you what all you're going to need to get. So first off, access route. So how it is that you're actually getting to the parcel. So if you have a trail or something like that, let us know. A reference point, so a close up of that monument, or like that etching of the monument that we talked about, something like that. Whatever you use it for the reference point. A close up of the nameplates. We're going to need an area view of your corner post, kind of like here, and then a view looking at the corner post, standing at corner number 1, looking down towards the corner number 2, and then again looking the other direction back towards corner number 4. So looking down all the lines. So down the lines, we need to be able to see that flagging. So like even in this grainy photo, you can see all that pink flagging going down that line. So that's what we're going to be looking for in those photos, that it is well marked so that another staker is going to be able to see that, and that the surveyor is going to be able to find it. So photos of all your brush and flag lines. If there's anything else that you cross, a little stream, a trail, something like that through your property, give us a photo of that one. And then photos of your GPS settings and any of the waypoints. All right. Any questions about field work, filling out the application, brushing, flagging, corner posts, measurements, any of that stuff? Okay. So at this point, we're going to get into completing the application. All right, so it's pretty simple. Oops, geez, jumped ahead of myself. So pretty simple. So you go out in the field, so you come back from the field, you're going to take that, copy of all your field notes, photographs, all that kind of stuff, and you've got your, your field notes and your lease application that has all the notes and bug guts and everything else on there. You're going to get a clean copy, and you're going to start filling that out. Fill out all the information, around, from the top, vital statistics, all the information about who is operating your GPS and distance, direction, all that. Fill it all in there, and then attach and describe all of the photographs. So all the photographs you take have to be adequately labeled so we can see what they are. A pile of a bunch of flagging on lines isn't going to do us any good if we can't tell what it's of. All right, so you're going to fill everything out. You're going to go to the back page, your review and certification portion. You're going to sign it, and then you can send it in to us. So there's going to be a $240 application fee when you send that in. If you are mailing it in, you can mail in a check, or you can use that credit card form on there, and we'll just shred the credit card form when we're done with it. And then send it in with a copy of the staking map. If you are going, so you can email or fax your application in if you want to get it in early, especially if you're going to be going out at the very beginning of the staking period. So you want to get in on that. Like the first day of the application period, which is March 4th, and we'll cover that in a little bit of detail. But you can email and fax it. Emailing photos works fine as long as you label what each and every one of them are. Please do not fax photographs. It just doesn't work. It's not gonna. So anyway, so either give us physical copies or give us a digital copy of your photographs. All right, so you're gonna apply for your lease now. So we were talking about this, or we touched on this a little bit about the priority and boundaries and how things shift, right? So that's what this is all about. So you can go out, you can start staking at 8 a.m. on March 4th, March 1st, excuse me. And then so you have all throughout that weekend, like Friday and that weekend, to complete your staking, which is, by all means, we would much rather that you actually do the job correctly and get it done. Maybe if it takes you a few more days or a couple of trips, get it done completely and correctly rather than trying to get it done early. So you can come in as soon as March 4th and complete and turn in your completed lease application with all of the photos. Once all your once our paperwork's done, you can give it to us by mail or fax or email, but we need to receive the physical copy of that within 14 days. So you need to turn in we need to receive within 15 days, the physical copy of your lease application within 15 days of you emailing or faxing us the application. Within 14 days of you completing your staking, we need to receive that staking application. And so here's the reason being. So one of the rules is that you cannot cross over any brushed or flagged boundary that's out there in the field, right? Because somebody might be in the process of staking that, so you can't cross that boundary. So if you're out there in the field and you come across this random brushed and flagged line, out there, and you call me up and you say, "Hey Tim, we're out here staking, but there's this flagged line out here. We didn't see any corner posts or anything else out there. Can I stake across it?" And my answer is going to be something along the lines of, "Well, let me check, but give me 14 days." Right? Because if I haven't heard anything in 14 days from somebody that's actually out there staking a parcel, then I don't know, that could be somebody's trail. It could be a trapline trail. We don't know. So that's why once you start staking, you need to submit that application within 14 days, get that back into us, or at the very least, just let us know that you're out there. Let us know that you're staking. So anytime, once you start, let us know where it's at. Give us the court information you have. Give us what you have. Even if you're not ready to submit your lease application, but at least we know what's out there in the field. Does that make sense? All right. So parcel seniority. So if you have those two, so if you come across a line in the field, you're going to stake right up next to it. And then say both of you are staking, we'll say 5 acre parcels, right? Anyway, there's 5 acre parcel. Yours is, well, whatever size yours is. If we need to adjust for size, if they got their application in first, we are going to prioritize their adjustment over yours effectively. So we're probably gonna we would probably move and make the adjustment to your parcel rather than them as necessary. Anyway, so whoever gets their application in first has the priority for adjustment, right? So with that said, and I'll tell you how that works, but so I've been doing this program for about 16, 17 years or something like that for a long time. The only time that this ever actually really became an issue is we had 2 people that came in. They submitted their application on the first day, and we had to figure out, who we were gonna adjust first. And they were friends or whatever. They staked their parcels together, and they didn't even care, how it came out. So it is not something to get worried about priority. Oh, are you guys talking smack to each other? Who's gonna? I figured no, they're gonna adjust me first. So anyway. So, but yeah, so this is really not a thing, but the way this works anyway, so we're going to go through parcel seniority. So adjustments are made in a priority on whoever files their application first for having to make the adjustments. Regardless, we are going to work with both parties to do whatever we can. With that said, if there are any conflicts out in the field, it is much better that you get those worked out with your neighbor rather than us working it out, because it's probably better to wait until you actually both own the property to start the feud. Secondly, anyway, if we have to make the adjustment, we're probably not, you're more likely to get what you want if you guys can work it out together. Anyway, for that. But so whoever submitted it first gets the priority for the adjustment on there. And the way that works is so you come in March 4th so we're going to be open starting at 8 a.m. on March 4th in Fairbanks and in Anchorage to receive those lease applications. So we're going to be sitting around in Anchorage here. They're going to be up on the 6th floor up in Fairbanks. We'll have one of the conference rooms open up there, and we're going to be sitting there waiting about 8 a.m. Doors are going to be open, so you can pop on in. So between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. you bring in your application, assuming we can review it, see if it's complete and all that. If you're doing it remotely, you can email or fax in that application, to us. Now, with that said, it has to be a complete application. It can't be partially complete. By 10 a.m., it has to be fully complete. All the photos labeled, the entire application filled out and signed by 10 a.m. So if we have more than one application, at 10 a.m., we're going to have a priority of service drawing at 10 a.m. So if we have 2 applications from Antioch Dough Stock, we're going to throw them into a proverbial hat, and we're going to draw the names out of a hat to see who we adjust first. And again, pretty much every time we've done that, they are nowhere near each other anyway. So, but it's just kind of the system we have for figuring out who gets adjusted, who gets priority for application. Any questions on that? All right. So for this one, for both Aniak, Dostock, and East Fork Pass, pretty simple. You can start staking on March 1st, but you have to have that application in and complete by 4:30 p.m. on September 23rd, right? So that is the last day, and that is complete. So by 4:30, not 4:31. I mean, this is a legitimate point. It has to be in completed and date stamped by 4:30 p.m. on September 23rd. So please do not plan on stopping into the office on the 23rd at 4 o'clock with an incomplete application and expect to get it in. I mean, even with the complete application, it's pretty short turnaround time to review it and make sure everything is acceptable and substantially complete, necessary to accept it. So, all right. So this is pretty much everything that we've covered anyway, thus far. So we covered the staking packet anyway, and all the information in there. You're reviewing all that information, making sure you understand what's in there, getting prepared before you go out in the field, collecting all your materials, reviewing reviewing all the resources available to you, doing research, maybe even going out and checking out the area in advance. You select your site, put in the corner post, locate your reference point, brush and flag your boundaries, take your measurements, take your photos, do all that kind of stuff, put it on the application, and submit the application to us. And then, basically now we're ready to lease it. Any questions about anything from that? Okay, so real quick, some of the most common errors before we get into the leasing stuff, insufficient photos. So that means that either a photo is missing or the photo does not adequately depict what it needs to depict. So if we have a photo looking down your line, but it does not, we can't see that it's been brushed out, we cannot see that's been flagged, that's going to be an insufficient photo. So incomplete brushing or flagging, or again, the fact that you can't adequately depict that. If you are staked over a public water body or a serialized trail or within a setback or something like that, or if there's like inaccurate measurements, like we've had some that somebody was in a completely obscure coordinate system and they staked a parcel of land that covered from Fairbanks roughly to the Canadian border and down into a little bit of Southeast Alaska, so a little bit over 20 acres. Anyway, so making sure that if we have inaccurate stuff there, we will do our best to work with you, especially if we can see what your settings were. We can oftentimes correct that and see what it is. But excessive or discontiguous water frontage, so water frontage on more than one water body or not continuous along the entirety of it, or more than 33%. If it's not reasonably compact, so not roughly square rectangular or not 2 to 1. And then over or under acreage. And by minimal amounts, we can deal with that. But yeah, if it's grossly over or grossly under, we're gonna have to go back out. All right, so come back in the field, you lease your parcel. So kind of what happens once you submit that to us, we'll accept that. We're gonna review it. And so as we and like largely Justin and his team go through that, we'll review the application. If we have any questions, we'll reach out to you, and contact you to try and get anything sorted out. We'll try and put that on the staking map as soon as possible, so we can keep that updated so folks can see what's going on in the area. And then at the end of the staking period, so after the staking period, so in probably springtime of 2025, we're going to approve all of those. We're going to basically approve the applications, and we're going to send out the leases for everybody to sign. You need to have that. You need to send that one back signed and notarized. And then all on the same date in early 2025 or spring of 25, all of those will go into a lease at the same time. So we have one date of entry for everybody within that, within all of the staking periods. So while you are under lease, you have the sole and exclusive right to use that property. So you can, manage your property as you see fit with some very limited considerations. But while you're leasing it, you need to maintain and brush your flag lines. So you can use it, you can even build a cabin on it, but a couple of considerations with that. So if you are going to be building a cabin, I strongly recommend that you build a cabin probably more towards the interior of the parcel or whatever development that you build on there. Make it more towards the interior of your parcel and make it mobile, like post on pad or something that you can move, because we cannot convey you that parcel if you put improvements within an easement, a setback or something like that, right? So we cannot convey you that parcel if that's in there. So you would have to move that before we can roll you into purchase on that, right? So make it mobile, build towards interior parcel. We do our best when we're reviewing the application to let you know, like if there's going to be a survey section, if there's going to be a section line easement going through your property, or if there's going to be some sort of a building setback or something like that. We'll cover those ones specific to each of those areas. We'll do our best, but you just need to make sure you're avoiding those. in there. So you'll be making quarterly lease payments during that period of time. We'll break down exactly how that goes here next. And then during that 3-year period, we are going to have that parcel surveyed and appraised during that 3 years. And so you lease it for 3 years. We might have to extend it for 1 year, depending on the timing, but generally it's a 3-year period. So the entirety of this is going to be depending on the area that you're at, parcel size, all that. So, I mean, it could be as much as the lease, you could be paying as much as $9,420 anyway in that. So that makes a couple of assumptions here, but it's going to be a $240 per year annual lease fee broken up over, over quarters, anywhere over 4 quarters. You're going to be paying a survey deposit. So any stock is a bit higher survey cost and survey deposit than East Fork Pass. So it's going to be up to $8,900 for the survey deposit on that one. Appraisal deposit for both areas is $500. So the way that breaks up is you're going to be looking at up to about $844 for $844 quarterly payment for those 3 years, right? During that survey and appraisal period during the lease. So that is assuming on the higher end. So it's going to be $844 or most likely lower. The more acreage you have, the higher the survey, the portion of the survey you're going to be paying. So the higher survey cost. So that's going to drive that up a little bit. But you can see the survey estimates in the it's either going to be in the brochure or in the supplemental staking instructions for each area. All right, so we're going to contract with the surveyor during that period of time. They're going to go out and survey the parcel, and we're going to be working with them as they set the corner post and actually do the survey. With that, anyway, when they're out there in the field, they might call us with adjustments. So they might call in here and they might say that they might call in and say, yeah, this parcel is actually 20.2 acres. We need to adjust it, right? So we might call you up and we'll say, hey, like your parcel is just a little bit over. Can we bump your quarter number 3 south just a little bit, right? Anytime during that, if we have to make adjustments that are greater than 10% in the parcel size, we're required to contact you for that. Legitimately, we're going to try and contact you about anything. The big thing is typically we are talking with the surveyor on a sat phone or whatever. They're out there in the field trying to set them on. So please be, as responsive as you can if we have those questions come. We're doing our best to try and work with you to make sure that everybody, is successful and gets what they're looking for on that. So the surveyor is going to be drafting up something like this, survey plat for the parcel. And then once they get it, once they get everything surveyed, they're going to come back in, plat this up, and then we're going to send this out we're going to have it here in the Fairbanks office, Anchorage office. We're going to ask you to come in and sign the survey plat. So during that time, we're going to ask you to review your parcel to make sure that's what you staked and to make sure that adequately depicts basically all the easements, setbacks, all that kind of stuff, right? So none of this should be a surprise to you because all of those setbacks, easements, and other things are going to be on the lease that you already had. So there should be no surprises on this. But we're going to ask you to sign this because you are the lessee of that property. So having that property interest, you sign the plat. Please be as responsive as possible on this. So during that 3-year lease period, we try to get it out during that 3 years. This is one of those things that can actually hold it up if people aren't coming in and signing right away. It drags it out for everybody. We might have to extend the lease by into that additional year for everybody because we have one person who hasn't come in and signed the plat. So please be responsive and come in and sign as quickly as possible when you get that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Carry on. Hey, so it's just 10 of us.
Yeah.
What if we all get our states and get everything turned in within, well, before the period? Is it going to take the surveyor 3 years to realistically get out there?
Yeah. So, and there's some specific reasons for it. So first off, it is, so everybody, both Antioch, Stock, and East Fork Pass, everybody is going into the same date of entry, the same thing. The date of the cycle that we have is actually largely based on a couple of things. One is, basic on workload, right? Small teams that are, managing a lot of ongoing parcels, and we have overlapping offerings from like the last offering to this one. And, we're trying to balance the offering of one, the staking of another one, the surveying of another one all at the same time. So additionally with that is the kind of the timeline for, for getting the surveys completed. So since the staking period ends in September in the fall, once that gets done, everybody goes into leases, for that. we cannot actually start the survey until the next field season anyway, right? It's the earliest that we can. But on our end, our state licensed surveyors have to review, all of the lease areas, all the legal descriptions, all that kind of stuff. They have to draft up the survey instructions for a surveyor, get that out to bid. And of course, it's bureaucracy, so it has to go through that bureaucratic process for bidding and all that stuff. They review the surveyor contract bids and all that, and they go out. And then typically so the surveyor has a 2-year period of time, which gives them all right, so the legislature a couple of years ago moved our funding from, so this used to be a capital program, right? Which capital fundings is good for 5 years. They moved it to operating because they determined that since we are not actually building anything, it's operating funds, so it's only good for 1 year. So with that, it highly restricts us because we get the operating funds on July 1 of each year, and they expire on July 30th of the next year, unless it's encumbered under a contract, which we can extend it for 1 more year. So the way that works, my apologies, what happens is we go into a contract. Typically, we go out through the bidding process and everything in the springtime. So we can select a contractor. That contractor gets basically we can award the contract as early in the fiscal year as possible. So right at the beginning of July, which gives them the last half of the field season to get out there and do their preliminary field work, which means they don't actually typically get the monuments set and the other stuff until the beginning of the next field season. And typically they do field work during the summer and plating during the winter because they're managing multiple contracts, and they do survey work while they can do the survey work and office work when they can do the office work. So that generally puts the plating off into the winter afterwards. It's a thing. It's just kind of in the way it is. So yeah, realistically, we're going to be, the contracts will probably be rolling out sometime in like 2026. I'm guessing for survey contracts for these areas. All right, so this is some of the common reservations that you're going to have for the areas, and it's going to depend a bit on each of the area, but all of the areas are going to have a 30-foot public access utility easement along all boundaries. All areas are going to have a 50-foot easement centered on any section lines through going through your parcel or adjacent to your parcel anyway. So if you take right up to a section line, it's going to be 50 feet. It's going to overlap that 30-foot lot line. It's going to have a 60-foot public access easement centered on any of the trails. And then depending on the area, I think in this offering, we'll have to double check when we get to it, but I believe all of them are going to have a 100-foot building setback from ordinary high water mark of any public or navigable water body. So in the case of Aniak, Dostock, and so in the case of Aniak River and Dostock Creek, 200-foot setback from Aniak, 100-foot from Dostock, but that's an ownership setback, so you don't own all the way. If you stake up to it, you have to stake all the way up to or 330 feet away from that setback. And so you don't own that first 100 feet or 200 feet for Dostock or Aniak respectively. But if there's another public water body, so like one of those the streams, creeks, ponds, whatever out there, if you stake up to that, you would own all the way up to the ordinary high water mark, but there's a 50-foot easement along it, and there'll also be a 100-foot building setback from that. So you own that 100 feet in that case, you just can't build with it. Make sense? All right. We'll cover reserve area stuff a little bit later when we get to East Fork Pass where it's going to apply. Well, actually, Aniak will too. Anyway, so you're going to get a copy of the plat to review that against all those restrictions, and then please be timely in returning it. So let's take a brief 5 minutes here. We'll meet at 12 after, and then we'll go over the leasing and appraisal process. Then we're going to cover the area specific information after that. And I'll pretty much wrap it up. I do want to show, give a couple demonstrations of Alaska Mapper and such. So meet back here in about 5 minutes or so. Okay, we'll go and get started again here, get back to going. All right. Yeah, so let's pick back up. We'll get back into the appraisal process anyway. So the appraisal on these areas has already been completed anyway. So we already know what the hypothetical value of a parcel is in there. So we know the land value per acre based on a couple of assumptions. So case in point at the top here, we're looking at Aniak Dostock. So the for Antioch Dostock, it has a hypothetical key parcel A and key parcel B, very specifically first tier, second tier parcel. So highest value parcels are going to be those that are right up on the water frontage versus ones that are set distant from that. And I'm just going to double check here. I believe East Fork Pass is just a single, doesn't have two key. Sorry. Yep, so there's only a hypothetical parcel A, just, I mean, all one type. So this isn't going to apply necessarily to the East Fork Pass acres. But what does apply anyway is the assumptions based on that. So in this case, on a hypothetical parcel in Antioch Dostock key parcel A, the lot type is going to be first tier frontage on Antioch River or Dostock Creek, right? The access is going to be by boat along the Antioch River, Dostock Creek, and then the building site is going to be 50% level, bless you, to gently sloping, adequately drained and wooded. Amenities or unobstructed access to Antioch River, Dostock Creek, right? So those are the assumptions. Based on whatever you stake, it might yours is going to differ a little bit up or down from that. So what's going to happen is once your parcel is actually is staked, we're going to evaluate your parcel against the value of the hypothetical parcels in there. And why is this not shifting? Sorry. Whoa. Jiminy Christmas, that caught up really quick. Yeah, okay. Okay, so after your parcel is surveyed, we're going to evaluate your parcel, or the appraisers, I should say, are going to evaluate your parcel based on the hypothetical parcel. And so you're going to get something when you get once the parcel is surveyed and appraised, you're going to get a purchase packet in the mail, and you're going to have all the information necessary to purchase the parcel. You can purchase it outright, or you can finance it with the state. We'll cover all that stuff. But it's going to have this piece of information in here, which is the appraisal on your parcel. And what it's going to do is it's going to evaluate your parcel against that hypothetical parcel. So in this example, this is from one of our old Lake Louise staking areas. But it gives it shows the adjustments. And if you can kind of see, I apologize, it's going to be small over here, what the adjustment for the key parcel A was versus in this kind of third column over here to the right, what that particular parcel is. So the key parcel in this case that they were evaluating against was a 5-acre parcel. This one is 8.64 acres. So the adjustment is 0.83. So it's 83% of the cost per, or the value per acre. The more you stake, the larger the parcel, the more the cost per acre decreases, right? So the smaller the parcel gets, the higher the value per acre. The larger the parcel gets, the lower the value per acre. So the access in this case is the same. The building site's average, easements are typical, and amenities are typical. So all that's straight across the board. So ultimately, what the point with all this is if you find that perfect parcel anyway in Antioch Dostock or on East Fork Pass that, I mean, you've got, the water frontage you like, instead of like when we were looking at Antioch Dostock, it was 50% well drained, relatively flat, right? If yours is 100% well drained, totally flat, you've got trees, like the best trees everywhere. And you've got, views of Mount McKinley for 360 degrees around your parcel, whatever. I don't know. If you've got Valhalla, I know it's not possible. But the point being, if you found your unicorn habitat, right? So in that case, chances are that parcel might go up or down by 10, maybe 20% based on that, right? So if you stake something that's better drained, better slope, something like that, it might, bump up. Any of these things might adjust up or down by 10 to 20%. If it is, if you go out and stake, try and save a little bit of money by staking 20 acres of swampland, you might save yourself 10%, right? So it's not worth it anyway. So get whatever is going to be usable to you. And the best way to adjust the value of that parcel is adjusting by the size of that parcel, if that makes sense. But that's how this is going to work. We already know what the value of the parcel is based on those hypotheticals. And in the case of Antioch Dostock, if you stake further away from if you're not right up on the setback from Antioch River or Dostock Creek, you're going to be paying less per acre for those. And then in the case of East Fork Pass, I'm just going to read this out for folks. I'm actually looking at the brochure right now, but you can find this on the supplemental staking instructions. But on this one, the hypothetical parcel is based on Some are accessed by highway vehicle via the Nome Council Road, then by foot or ATV to the parcel. Within a quarter mile of the road, winter to be accessed by snow machine. So since that assumption is that it's within a quarter mile of the road, then in theory, if you are further than a quarter mile of the road, then your cost per acre is probably, overall cost, I should say, is going to decrease accordingly. So the further you get away, from that access, the lower the value is going to be. So anyway, does that make sense to everybody? Kind of how that works? Awesome. All right. So at that point, you're going to get this in a purchase pack, and now you can purchase your parcel. So in order to purchase your parcel, you can purchase it outright. So you can just pay us, the money up front. And let me, so you can pay the money up front for it. So during that lease period, you are paying, you're paying a $240 annual lease fee. That does not come off the purchase price, nor does the $500 appraisal deposit. However, the value of that survey deposit does come off the parcel, which is oftentimes the larger portion of the value of the parcel, especially the more remote you get. And if you get a smaller remote parcel, that's going to be the bulk of the value of the parcel is that survey cost. So with that, when you get to purchase it, you're going to owe us whatever the appraised market value of that parcel is based on that adjustment from the base appraisal, minus the survey deposit that you already paid during that lease period. So the minimum purchase price is going to be whatever that value is, or $1,000 over the survey cost. So, I mean, I don't even think, on any of these areas, I'm actually going to refer back to East Fork Pass again. If you staked a 5-acre parcel, if you staked a 5-acre parcel that's way in the heck and gone in the boonies, that's still going to be $18,000 roughly, right? Or actually, I mean, it might be a little bit lower if it's way off. So that's still well above the $7,000 whatever survey cost on there. So I don't think anybody's going to apply for it. That $1,000 over the survey cost is not going to apply to anybody here. Anyway, so when you purchase that, you purchase it. You can go into contract to purchase it outright. You'll get a patent to the property. At that point, you have free clear title to the land. We have no covenants or no post-patent restrictions on that. You own the surface estate only, statutorily or constitutionally rather. The state of Alaska is required to maintain the mineral rights on there, but these areas have been closed to mineral entry. So there's, somebody could not stake a mining claim under your property in this case. It is subject to the state of Alaska Plating Authority. None of these areas are within a municipality, so there's no taxes or covenants or not taxes or ordinance, whatever that apply to it at this time. I mean, who knows? I mean, at some point, municipalities might form in the area, but not presently. So when you purchase it, there's for financing the parcel, if it's less than $2,000, it has to be paid off in full. But anything over that, you can finance for up to 20 years, depending on the principal amount that's being financed. So it's up to anything over $20,000 can be financed for 20 years. So in order to enter into this, the conditions are very simple. You have to be, at least 18 years of age or older. You cannot have defaulted on a state contract within the last 3 years. Anyway, you cannot owe any municipal back taxes on any state contract that you're currently under contract with. State land that you're currently under contract with. So very simple, but yeah, no background checks or any of that. We do require a 5% down payment. So 5% of whatever that principal amount is. And then the interest rate is set at 3% above prime, which is really stupid high right now. With that said, anyway, it's capped at 11.5%. So it's 11.5% right now, but it is 3% above the prime interest rate that's set in the Wall Street Journal on the first day of the month in which the contract is written. So you're ultimately going to be looking at, probably it's going to be the prime interest rate in 2028 or something anyway, whatever that is. So, but yeah, so 3% above prime. All right. So that pretty much covers all of the everything from staking. So, I mean, preparing to get out, staking, filling all the or preparing for everything, getting all of your stuff squared away, ready to go out on the field, completing the field work, putting in your corner post, brushing, flagging your lines, filling in the application, turning in the application, leasing it for 3 years and purchasing it. Does anybody have any questions about any of that process? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, it is actually, and
It's the, not the disabled vets.
Oh, no.
But the 20% better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It applies to, the contract with that when you purchase.
Okay. Cool.
If you
Yeah.
haven't used it already.
That's
right, yeah.
One time.
Runtime will, yes. And so the question for those folks online, if you didn't hear it, is the remote rec parcels, are they eligible for the one-time 25% veterans discount? Yes. So, and with that, anyway, one thing to note is that while you under lease, the lease is not transferable, and we can only actually we can only issue the contract for the purchase, or basically pay it off and issue the patent to the individual who is on the lease, unless we can assign that at the time that it's going to contract, but we cannot assign it to somebody else, because since the lease is not assignable, we couldn't assign it to somebody else who is a veteran. So if somebody else has a spouse out there, if the authorization is their name, their spouse is a veteran, we cannot apply it to that because it's non-transferable anyway. But it's one time only, one time 25% discount. And that would happen at the time of purchase. So when you get that purchase information, you would need to submit the application for the veterans land discount at that time and submit your DD 214 and all that. So the other thing that brought up, so from a question from earlier, so if you have the authorization, we can issue we can only issue the lease to you, and it is not assignable, non-transferable, unless of a case of like a court case or probate or something like that, right? Ultimately the contract and/or patent would come out into your name. However, at the time that we are going into the sale contract, when we're doing the lease to sale, or lease directly to patent if you're paying it off in full, at that time you can do an assignment at that time to assign that contract and/or the patent to somebody else. So you could assign it to another individual or to yourself and your spouse or something like that. Anyway, so that would be the time you assign it over. So, all right. Any other questions about anything up until this point? Okay, so let's hop through. We're going to cover a couple areas. We'll hit Antioch Dostock first, and then we'll hit East Fork Pass. And then I figure we can have some discussion on, so we might touch on a couple other things, like one of the questions from the break here regarding water frontage. And then I also want to show I want to show the Alaska Mapper program and some of those research tools that kind of give folks a little leg up on prepping for that. So first off is the Antioch Dostock area. So summer access is via boat, effectively from the city of Antioch to Antioch River, Dostock Creek within the area. You can also access it via snow machine from Antioch as well. I'm not actually sure. I mean, and I wouldn't speculate as to landing on the Antioch River or Dostock Creek. I mean, some of those things that is up to that individual pilot to decide. There is the Marble Creek Cat Trail is an RS 2477 that runs the west of the area. It does not cross into the area. Antioch Dostock is largely surrounded on the northwest, and pretty much other than the southeast of the project is all surrounded by Kuskokwim land, which is private property. If you choose to try and get access across Kuskokwim land, you can contact them. There's their website right there. If you want to reach out to them, you might be able to get a permit to cross there, but that is solely up to them. That's nothing that we can do for that. But yeah, contact them. The Antioch River and Dostock Creek are navigable water bodies, up through the water to the project area, and largely through the project area. So yeah, you can operate a boat on there, no problem. Even though it crosses surrounding Kuskokwim uplands. So the staking period for East Fork Pass, same as the other ones, March 1st through September 23rd. The area is in a full fire management option. So again, that means it's going to have the second only to critical for the priority of initial attack if fire breaks out in the area. But that does not guarantee that either that will respond or that they will even attempt to prevent your cabin or whatever infrastructure from burning. So it's largely upon you, the landowner, to protect your own investment, and that's where that Firewise information comes in. It's within Management Unit 19A, and it's State of Alaska Plating Authority, so no taxes, no zoning, anything like that. So there are a number of private properties already within the Antioch area, Antioch Dostock area from prior land offerings, and as well as the Kuskokwim land surrounding that. So make sure you look at that survey boundary, the land ownership, and we'll show you that Alaska Mapper program here in a little bit as well. So this is information you'll find on the Antioch Dostock area specific staking instructions. So first off, there is a 200-foot staking setback from the Antioch River, 100-foot from Dostock Creek. So as a setback, that means that you either have to be up to that setback, so you have to be 200 feet from the Antioch River or 330 feet from that setback. So 530 feet from the Antioch River, right? Or from Dostock Creek, 100 feet from Dostock or 430 feet from Dostock, right? And that counts as water frontage. So if there's a public water behind you, you cannot be on both the setback from Antioch River or Dostock Creek and the public water body behind it. It has to be one or the other. There is a 200-foot setback from all other anadromous streams. We have not identified any other anadromous streams, so that largely is not really applied. There are a handful of reserved areas. If you look at those supplemental staking instructions, they're actually going to be listed right here in the yellow hash mark areas. And so those are reserved areas. So the difference between a reserved area and a setback. With a staking setback, you have to be up to or 330 feet away from that setback, right? And typically those setbacks are going to apply towards those high value things like access or, like a trail or river, something like that. So we want to make sure that if somebody's going to be staking in the area, they're taking full advantage of it or allowing that opportunity to somebody else. So all the way up to it or some distance from it. With a reserved area, you just cannot be within it. We don't care if you're all the way up to it or you're 50 feet away from it, 20 feet away, doesn't matter. You just cannot be within that area. And those reserved areas are going to be described in those supplemental staking instructions that's available on the staking website.
Why is it reserved area?
Timber area. And so so that was a request from the Division of Forestry to set aside areas that would be potentially available for timber harvest in the area. So for yourselves or other landowners in the area or future use, if somebody wants to go in and use that for collecting house logs, firewood, something like that, you can get a permit from Division of Forestry for that. And it's not restricted to just those areas. You can get a permit for anywhere within the area. They just wanted to make sure that there was effectively river accessible timber areas. So, and those areas made a lot of sense because those are, in some of these narrow areas here, these narrow bends where staking really doesn't make sense anyway, because it's hard to fit a parcel in there and adhere to the instructions. So, anyway, and we're going to be covering, that same thing here. And once we get done over here, cover some of those water frontage considerations. Anyway, and then DNR might, we may impose other reserved areas prior to the staking. I mean, that's a standard consideration if we find out about something out there that we didn't actually know about beforehand. So, all right. So with that, any questions about Antioch Dostock and staking in that area? Anybody online from Antioch Dostock have a question? Oh, I see a hand up.
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. So I noticed there's quite a bit of price difference between tier 1 and the interior lot that you'd mentioned. Now, I take a tier 1 would be something that would be on the river body. And if you're doing 20 acres, and would the entire 20 acres then be tier 1 if just part of it, or what is considered interior that makes it so much cheaper?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So the question for those who didn't hear was he was asking about those key parcel A and key parcel B, and that the water frontage, the first tier parcel are substantially higher value, and if that applies to the whole parcel. And taking that in part, yes. So if you take a stake a 20-acre parcel up to the water body, the entire that entire parcel, is valued as a first tier parcel because it's all part of the same parcel. So it's all valued as tier 1 at that higher value. Anytime when like those first tier parcels are considering things that typically the highest value added to a parcel is going to be access. So anytime we have a staking area or even like subdivisions and such, water frontage is typically the highest value. And then from there, like if there's trail frontage or something like that, that tends to increase value, direct frontage on a road, something like that that typically doesn't apply to remote rec. But access is largely the biggest driving factor in the value of a parcel. So did that answer your question?
Yeah. Is there, to make it interior, is there a guideline as far how far away from the water it can be to make it considered interior? Or?
Yep. Yeah, and so the question is, if you're going to go to the interior, how far to the interior? It is. So that first tier is going to be one with frontage directly on Antioch River or Dostock Creek. So because of that, so since there is a setback from both the Antioch River and Dostock Creek, and likewise from public water bodies, you have to be up 200 or 330 feet away. So if you are So if you're going to be staking in the vicinity of the Antioch River, you have to be either up on that setback, 200 feet from it, or 330 feet away from it. So you'd have to be 530 feet away from the Antioch River. Or from Dostock Creek with a 100-foot setback, it's 100 feet from it or 430 feet from it. If you are, in that case, 530 feet from the Antioch River or 430 feet from Dostock Creek, that would push you into that key parcel B, that interior parcel level. With that said, so going back to those, that appraisal adjustment, if you're going to, if you're staking, if your parcel is right at, we'll say 430 feet from Dostock Creek, it might be a little bit more valuable. That's where you're kind of talking to that 10 to 20% more valuable, than something that is 3 miles away from, Dostock Creek. But yeah, it is still going to be in that if there's enough space, generically speaking, if there's enough space to put another parcel between your parcel and the river, that's going to bump you into that interior value level.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So we're going to hop on East Fork Pass, and then, and then by all means, if anything comes up, just let me know. All right. East Fork Pass. Right outside the Nome area, or I guess east of Nome. The access to the area is via the Nome Council Road. And there's a couple of trails within the area, but it's generally, as you can see, pretty wide open for most of that. So this is where that generally allowed uses comes in this area. So you can use an ATV, ATV, an off-road vehicle rather, up to 1,500 pounds, or a wheeled off-road vehicle up to 2,000 pounds up there without a permit to get access to your parcel. So we don't have, we'll cover trails here in a second, but yeah, so largely it's, access is across open ground out there to the parcel. It is full fire management option, same as Antioch. This one is actually split right on the boundary between units 22B and 22C. It is within unorganized borough, so same deal. Presently, no taxes or zoning out there in the area at present. There are other private properties out in the area from prior offerings, and moreover, there's a couple of other reserved areas and setbacks and such, which we'll cover in a little bit of detail. So these are all labeled on the map, and just a reminder, we did just update the staking map last night to make some corrections for some of this. So clarification. So there is going to be a 300-foot setback from the material site that's listed there within the staking area. And so that's a setback. So you have to be either up to it or 330 feet away from that setback. There's going to be a 200-foot setback from both the Nome Council Road, and there's an easement on the kind of western portion of the area that's right along Nome Council Road. So again, same deal, up to or 330 feet away from that. And then there is a 100-foot staking setback from the ordinary high water mark of those creeks, anyway, that are listed on the staking map. And so those are largely the anadromous or fish-bearing streams within the area. So 100-foot setback, so up to or 330 feet away from those. There's also on the eastern boundary, the Topcock Ditch kind of comes in from the east boundary and kind of exits a little bit further to the south. There is a 50-foot setback from that as an old historic ditch. Anyway, it's for those who haven't seen it, it's a kind of a built-up earthen berm ditch from old mining operations out in Nome. Anyway, pretty neat. But doesn't really flow any water now or anything. But 50-foot setback from that. As a setback, you have to be up to it or 330 feet away from it. And then there's 2 meteorological sites up in the area. So those are reserved areas. So a 70-foot radius reserved area around those. So it doesn't matter how close you are as long as you're not within 70 feet of them, or your parcel's not within 70 feet of either one of those. And so there's the map. Anyway, the updated staking map. But that pretty much covers everything, I think, on that.
Yeah, I think. Come up there.
Yeah.
So generally what some of the updates, corrections were to the staking map, the intention for 3 areas in East Fork Pass, 2 staking area, they're originally described as staking setbacks, which it's something where you have to either stake up to the staking setback or 330 feet plus from that staking setback. And so these are actually, the updates actually clarify that these will be reserved areas. So the the difference between the reserved areas and the staking setbacks is the reserved areas, you just can't stake within them. There's no rule that you have to be 330 feet away from that reserved area. You can stake up to it, or you can stake 100 feet away from it. That part is not as important. So it makes it a little less restrictive than what was described in both the brochure and the supplemental instructions. And I'm actually working on updating those supplemental instructions. The staking map has already been updated to show that these are the 3 areas are reserved areas. And then there'll also be a brochure errata that will be on the staker resources page. So I'll be sending an email out describing that in detail, just so you can kind of see the difference. But what those differences are, it's for the meteorological sites that are shown on the staking map, as well as the Topcock ditch. So originally it said there's a 70-foot staking setback from the meteorological sites, and it's actually a 70-foot radius reserved area instead. And then we've got on the Topcock ditch instead of a 50-foot staking setback from each side, it's actually a reserved area that's 50 feet from each side of the outermost edge of the Topcock ditch. And so that'll be described in the email I will send out in the next couple of days, far before we actually go out to stake. So just wanted to clarify that about what those updates actually are.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and then one thing to note on East Fork Pass specifically, so it's pretty wide open area. There's a handful of trails, and I mean you can see the ones we've identified here. There's the old alignment of the Nome Council Road up there as well, and there's that trail kind of along that cuts through the east. So there's any trails that are out there. There's a lot of old 2-track trails that kind of cut through the area, and I understand there might be a couple in Aniak Dostock as well, like old trapline trails perhaps. But other trails that so any trails that are active and in use at the time of staking will receive a 60-foot easement centered on that trail. So yeah, my recommendation would be to stake up to that trail, not across the trail. So that way that 30-foot easement that's either side of the center line of the trail is going to be coincident with your boundary anyway. So it's not going to affect you and where you can build. All right. So any questions about East Fork Pass? All right, any questions about anything else that we've covered thus far today?
Yeah, I had a question about the bodies of waters. So
Okay.
if you're touching a body of water, you're pretty much safe to stake land as long as you stay at least 330 feet away, plus whatever easements required from any other body of water, right?
Well, so then the question was about staking adjacent to bodies of water. So yeah, the water bodies. So some there are setbacks from some water bodies, but not all water bodies. So in the case of so there's and were you staking East Fork Pass or Aniak Dostock?
Aniak Dostock.
Aniak Dostock. Okay, so in that case, the only water bodies that have setbacks from them. Here, I'm going to pop that one back up here. So you have the Aniak River and Dostock Creek, that 200-foot staking setback from other anadromous streams. I don't think we've identified any other anadromous streams other than those. Let me double check here on the map. But
My
yeah,
big concern was touching 2 bodies of water, because you're not allowed to touch 2 bodies of water, right?
right. So so what it is if you are if you're staking up on the Aniak River, you have to be 200 feet away from it, or 100 feet from Dostock Creek. All of the other public water bodies that are up there, you can be, you can be up to them or 330 feet away from them. But yeah, so there's not a specific setback from them. You can be right up on, so like on case in point, yeah, you're not gonna be able to see my pointer here. But yeah, so if like any one of those like small little oxbow blue kind of lakes up there, yeah, so you can stake right up to it anyway, and you can use that as a boundary of of your parcel. But yeah, so you either have to be up to it or 330 feet away from it. Now, in the case of, in fact, here, let me see. Okay, we're gonna try something here. This might be. Oops. Okay, now. I unpinned this. Pardon me, I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute and then I'm going to share again so I can get my banner up here. Okay. All right, so in this case right here, so I'm going to try and draw on this here real quick if I can, or at least show my pointer here. All right, so if you're looking at a case that is trying to find a good spot where this might apply. Well, here I'll point to this parcel here. So this is a good example. So this one is so that one is it is directly on the water body right there. So it's neither on Dostock Creek nor the Antioch River. It is just another public water body. It's staked up to the water body, but you'll notice kind of right where my cursor is, that is there's at least 330 feet behind that parcel, so it doesn't have frontage on both water bodies, right? So now, give me a second here, and I'm gonna go to my pointer here, and I'm gonna go to a blank page here, and I'm gonna, come on. Oh, it's doing it again. Dadgummit. We were having this problem yesterday. I thought I had it figured out. I was actually going to draw on here, so it might take me a second. My apologies. The pencil is not working again, and I have this pinned up here to where it's. Okay, I'm just going to draw on my screen, and we'll figure that part out later. All right, so what we're looking at. So if you have a water body, so this came up a little bit earlier. So if you have a stretch of a water body kind of like that, right? So you would not be able to just take and make this your parcel right here, because that is vastly exceeding the 33% water frontage. Likewise, you wouldn't be able to draw a line right down the middle, because that's probably, I mean, at least 50% water frontage somewhere in there along either side of that. So what you would have to do in that case, and let's see if I'll erase that. So in that case, in either one of those, you would have to, adjust the parcels to where you might not be able to get a 20-acre parcel in there, but you might be able to get a 5-acre or 10-acre parcel that conforms to the restrictions. So in that case, from right here, these parcels, they would have 330 feet, 33%, excuse me, 33% of frontage along the water body or along the frontage from that water body, and be more than 330 feet from the other side of the river or the setback anyway. Likewise, if you were staking, so say for instance, there was a pond right back up over here. So you would not be able to stake a parcel, I mean, assuming that there's a setback from the river there, you would not be able to stake a parcel that goes between the setback and the pond. You would have to do one of two things. That would be either, pardon me for a moment. Correct. Yep. So you would have to do one of two things. You would have to stake one of these two parcels. So one that is either up on that setback, but more than 330 feet away from the setback, or sorry, from the other public water body, or stake one that's on the public water body, but more than 330 feet away from the setback from the other water body.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other questions on any of that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the question is, if the state maintains the mineral rights, does that mean there's not going to be any mining? The practical answer is yes. The legal answer is probably not. Anyway, so we close lands to mineral entry prior to sale because we don't want a conflict between the surface estate and the subsurface estate, right? So we don't want somebody in there and staking a mining claim up underneath their property. With that said, As with anything, that we do, I mean, we cannot bind the hands of a future legislature or something like that. So, there could be some legislative action that opens it up, it opens up the area to mining at some point in the future. The likelihood of that is pretty nil. I mean, none of these areas are highly mineralized. In a way, I don't think it's, there's, with land sale areas, we typically avoid areas that are mineralized for that very reason. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, because anything is, conceivably possible, but it is highly unlikely that any mining would ever take place there. So, and to that end, anyway, so I should note that it is, so when lands are closed to mineral entry, so generically, all right, well, we'll get into the weeds on this one a little bit. Generically, the entire state of Alaska is open to mineral entry unless specifically closed. So it actually takes, the act of the legislature to close lands for mineral entry. However, so the Department of Natural Resources can, in certain specific instances, close up to 640 acres of land for sale for mineral entry, which is specifically, closing to mineral entry is closing to the staking and mining claims. However, we do have the caveat that if it's for a land sale, we can close lands larger than 640 acres. So these areas have been closed to mineral entry. With that said, so it closed it to the staking of mining claims. The state of Alaska still retains, let me back up. It retains its staking and mining claims for locatable minerals. That does not close it to the staking, or it does not close it to leasable minerals such as oil and gas, rare earth minerals, coal, things like that, right? Those are considered leasable minerals, not locatable. You don't get those with a staking and mining claim. So yeah, they are closed, for that purpose. But again, I mean, it's, they're not areas that are highly sought after for oil and gas or, coal or rare earth minerals in this area anyway. Anytime that those are, so if we'll say worst case scenario, anyways, somebody finds some major gold deposit up in Aniak Stock, right? And they want to go out there and mine. So they could stake they could have it open up to mineral entry, and they could ask the legislature, the governor, whatever, to open up. We could open up, they could stake the mining claims, and they would then have the right to extract the minerals underneath their property. Chances are, if they're going to go through all that effort and is that rich of a deposit, they're going to probably say, hey, so you paid like 25,000 for this property. You want to take about 80,000 for it and sell it to us? Is generally probably how that would go. Moreover, if anytime, even if you don't want to sell it to them, as much as they have the right to extract the minerals, they are required to remunerate the surface estate owner for any damages in doing that. So, I mean, if they were going to go across your property or, do something that was going to damage your property in some way, they are required to compensate you for that anyway. So,
but you yourself, saying your neighbors and everything else, you're not going to potentially end up with a bunch of large mining. This is, or when you said the state owns the minerals or retains the rights to the minerals. If I decided to start a big mining claim, that's not still the state's. At that point, it's your property.
Well, yeah. So it is. So you would. So there's a difference between the ownership of the surface estate and the subsurface estate. So you own the surface, like so once you stake your property and all that, you own the surface. You have the sole exclusive right to use that surface estate. However, the subsurface estate, the mineral estate, as it were, is owned by the state of Alaska. It's currently closed to mineral entry, so somebody cannot presently stake a mining claim there. It would take a special act to open that up to where somebody could. And then if they could, they would be required to compensate you for any damages.
Staking of a mining claim different than me owning my property.
Oh, yeah.
And going out with an excavator and just deciding to mine.
Right. So anyway, so
that's where I'm going with the fact, one day you show up and you say, oh, it looks like he decided to become a mine and not put a nice little cabin in.
right. So yeah. So with that, anyway, okay. So the question is, for those who couldn't hear it, basically, is in a nutshell, is what happens if you wanted to start mining on your property, right? Yeah. So yeah, actually, I mean, so technically, I mean, so you own the gravel, you just don't own the gold that is in the gravel, right? So the only way that you can actually, claim ownership of that gold is if you actually, and in fact, I should actually point out a caveat on that too. Anyway, the only way that you can actually claim that is through a mining claim. Anyway, so that gives you the right to extract the gold and take ownership of the gold, right? And so that would require certain, the permits and everything else associated with that. So yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's I mean, it's all, I mean, it's an academic argument at this point. There's not really any gold out there, but yeah, so legally speaking, yes, you could actually dig up and use the gravel. You can even go out and sort out the gold from the gravel, but legally speaking, you'd have to leave the gold in the little pile right there and you can't take it or sell it because it's not yours. Because it hasn't, because until you actually go through that process of,
I guess what it comes down to is you're not, it's basically like a covenant. It's almost like you're not, you're not gonna wake up one day to something like that.
pretty much. I mean, yeah, because it's closed to middle entry. So, I mean, and so insofar as, so in the state of Alaska, somebody does not actually have to have a mining claim to actually engage in mining. They can do so. I mean, you can get somebody can get a prospecting site or somebody can do any of that stuff, but they are required to go through that annual placer mining application or like hard rock mining, whatever application. So there's a huge permitting process that goes along with it once they actually get into production. Anyway, and so I mean, insofar as these areas are not, whatever subject to that really anyway, because there's not really any high value minerals out there. But yeah, it would still have to go through all that process anyway. And so you would be notified as an adjacent, owner or the surface estate owner if that was ever to happen anyway, if they're going to be going through that process. So, but yeah, and again, I mean, it's all just pretty much academic argument. But they did actually bring up one point. So we were talking about gravel. So yeah, the gravel is actually a surface estate. It's a surface estate interest anyway. So you actually own the gravel on your property. So I mentioned earlier that while you're under lease and while you're under contract, you have the sole and exclusive right to use the surface estate, as you see fit, with few exceptions. The two exceptions of that, so you may not remove either so while under lease or under contract, you may not remove the gravel or the timber from your parcel, right? You can use it on site, so you can dig up the gravel, use it for a pad, you can cut down the trees, and you can either burn them or build a cabin on them, but you cannot ship them off site, you can't sell the timber, right? And the reason for that is we just don't want somebody getting a parcel and basically selling off all the timber, selling off all the gravel, and just giving us back a hole in the ground kind of thing. The other thing is that while, right, so all that high value timber up in East Fork Pass too, right? Anyway, so the other thing to consider is that so during the lease period, anyway, for the remote recreational cabin site, this does not apply during contract, but during the lease, you are not allowed to use that parcel for a full-time residence or for commercial purposes. You have to wait until you're leased under contract before you can do that. Okay. All right. Any other questions popping up? Okay. So if you guys don't mind giving me just a few minutes here, and I'm going to try and figure out how to get this off of my screen anyway and get back to that. And then I want to show you guys the Alaska mapper. So let's do 1 o'clock. If folks want to stick around just for a few extra minutes, we'll show you the Alaska mapper program and anything else that might come up. All right, so let's get going again here. All right, so I'm gonna show you. There's a couple things I wanted to show you here real quick about the area here. Justin, would you mind pulling up the ADL numbers for both of these areas for me, please, so I can give me a shortcut? All right, so this is our Department of Natural Resources webpage. Anyway, this is the general public webpage here. If you go here, go to the research tab here, and then under research is going to be the Alaska Mapper link. And so this is going to be a fantastic tool for everybody to use for kind of planning for your staking, and to see what's kind of going on both, before you go out there and start staking, and then throughout, the time that you're leasing and owning the parcel as well. So this maps basically all the stuff that's going on in the area. So we're going to start out here. We're going to click on the Launch Alaska Mapper, and I'm going to go to the land estate map. So that the land estate is going to show us all of the the surface estate interest stuff, which is what's ultimately going to apply to us. If you wanted to know about what mining claims in the area or the mineral orders and such, you could go to the mineral estate map. That would show the same thing, or show that information. And then there's water for if you want to look at water rights and such, and the surface classification is planning for the most part. Let's hit ENIAC DOSDoc. So a couple of ways to get here. So you can go for the you can go to the search one on the side, and you could, if you wanted to, you can search by Alaska place name, And for like Antioch Dostock, it's close enough. I could just plug in Antioch right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the DNR case, and I'm going to get plug in the ADL number. So the ADL number is the Alaska Division of Lands number. It's just a serial number that we give to basically our case files. So when you submit your lease application, we are going to assign you an ADL number. So on your lease application where it says ADL in the upper right, that's Alaska Division of Lands, not Alaska driver's license. So different number. But anyway, that one is
229-342.
all right. And so I'm just going to hit view feature. If you hit draw feature, it makes it a queryable layer. And I'm going to show you how to query stuff later, but we don't necessarily need that right now. All right, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to clear that off of there. So this shows the area in that kind of magenta kind of hash mark stuff. So this is the red hash mark stuff. That is the boundary of the area. These areas that are in the kind of magenta, purple, or whatever color, those are parcels that are either under contract or conveyed. They're already sold, or they're somebody else's private property. In fact, right now, the gray background that's on here is all of the state land in the area. So if you'll notice that the northern portion of it is surrounded by, it doesn't have any gray on there. That's land that the state of Alaska does not own and has not owned. So in this case, it's pretty much all Kuskokwim land surrounding it. But there is a good bit of expanse of state land off here to the southeast of the project area here in that gray area. So a couple of things to show you that are pretty handy right now. If you go to the kind of the stacked layer up over here on the left, that's the layers page. So you can go to this ArcGIS USA topo map, which is what we're looking at right now. Another useful one is you can go to the national map topo, which shows it on a little bit finer grain, specifically if you zoom in. So specifically to East Fork Pass users, we'll look at that in a minute. So East Fork Pass, since there's a lot more topography, as you zoom in, it increases those topographical lines. So it can give you a little bit better representation of slope in the area if you wanted to use that to kind of consider what you wanted to stake out there. But what I think is even better is there's a whole bunch of different imagery. So you can go to, like, my favorite is this ArcGIS World Imagery right here. But there's also Bing aerial imagery, and then any of these like these RGB, the high resolution imagery layers. But I'm going to go to ArcGIS World Imagery because it's pretty good here. And then I really don't care about much other than the project area or the the private parcels that are out there. So I'm going to turn everything off. So the V is for visible, A is for active if you're going to query it, and then L is for labeled. So I'm going to turn everything off from visibility, and then I'm going to go down here to the land disposal conveyed, because those are all the private parcels, and then the land disposal other, which shows me the project area, right? So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to see just kind of where I want to stake in the area here. So I'm going to zoom in, and I don't have a mouse right now. I'm just using the touchpad, so I can't scroll that way. But all right, so say for instance, I want to, I'm going to look and see where I might want to stake a parcel. So there's, so like I kind of like this area right here. So on the outside of this bend, I can probably kind of figure out. So this is that's just a slough, one of those kind of those little lakes that's off of the Antioch River right there. But it looks like there's some decent land right out in here. So I want to see if so I know that if I'm going to be staking up against a public water body, there is going to be a 50-foot easement along that public water body, and there's going to be a 100-foot building setback out, from the ordinary high water mark of that water body as well. So let's see, just kind of if I measure that out, I can go to this measure tool here, and I'm going to put it in standard to where it's feet and meters, or sorry, feet and miles, excuse me. And I want to see just how far I can get back. So 50 feet puts me right back there. So that kind of looks a little bit swampier right there. So let's kind of drop that right there ish. I'm going to see if this right here, 100 feet is right about there. So yeah, if I was to go there, I could probably go up, and I could have a little bit of a patch of trees right there if I wanted to, or, I could maybe go back over here and I could stake my parcel a little bit further back. And if I get, say, 365 feet back, I can get into a pretty decent band of trees back there, perhaps. So anyway, this kind of can help you kind of figure out based on the imagery and, you know, having an understanding of where those setbacks are, where the easements are going to be, where that's at. I'm also going to throw on here for a second. There's up at the top, there's this PLSS section grid, right? So I know that if I was going to, and I'm going to draw a polygon for the purpose of kind of showing you, if I was going to stake a parcel over here, that basically took advantage of some of that stuff, and I kind of got that tree to, oh, here, let me. Okay, so that's probably a bad parcel, but I didn't plan that out ahead of time. So if this was my parcel, which that's probably, I mean, it's got, you know, a fifth corner in there that I don't need, and it's not entirely perpendicular, but for the sake of argument, we'll just say that's the area. So I could build over here just fine, but there's this gray line right over here. I turned on this PLSS section grid. I know that there's going to be a 100-foot easement, 50 foot either side of center line, either side of that. So I'm not going to be able to build my cabin anywhere within there. So this can kind of help you plan out kind of for where those easements are. But all right, so I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to say that, you know, I want to build a, yeah, so I'm going to do something fairly similar in that area. And I'm going to see just how big of a parcel. So I'm going to measure area in this case and see just how big of a parcel I can get. So if I want to try and get, come on. All right. So yeah, what we'll say I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to go up to maybe here, get into that band of trees a little bit over there, and then come back in something like that. And I forgot to switch that over into acres. And I got to do it all over again. All right, so there, which I mean, that westerly boundary is, I should probably adjust that towards a bit more perpendicular to the water body, but I know that gives me an idea of scale, that would be about a, you know, roughly 9-acre parcel. Anyway, if I staked up in there, and I can use the measurement tool to kind of figure out, like, you know, where the building setback's going to be, where the 50-foot easement along the ordinary water is going to be. Yes, sir.
Question.
Yeah. Yeah.
In shape, what takes priority there if you have a curved water body?
Oh, it's perpendicular to the water bodies. So, and we say roughly, like, so this, I mean, realistically, if I was gonna do this a bit better, I would probably be doing something like this. So that would be perfectly acceptable because those two parcel boundaries are perpendicular to the water body. So I'm not high grading all that high value water frontage for somebody else. And like, yeah, so we say roughly square, rectangular, you know, basically trapezoidal is fine. It could be a trapezoid or rhombus. That's perfectly acceptable. All right, so that one we're looking at 15-acre, you know, parcel right there, roughly 14 and a half, acre parcel. So if this is where I wanted to stake, I can go out, and if you notice, right up here, this blue box right up at the top of the screen. So anywhere where I put that gives me a coordinate for that. Now that coordinate is in decimal degrees right now, but you know, my GPS is set up for decimal degrees, decimal minutes. So I'm just I'll put it in there. So that's giving me degrees at decimal minutes now, or I could hit it again to give it to me in, decimal seconds. So degrees, minutes, seconds right there. And so I can go over here and I can go up to that point, and I can go to that coordinate right there, and I can transcribe that, and I can put that directly into my GPS, and I can mark that, and I know that if I go to all those corners, adjusting for whatever is actually in the field, and you know, that taking precedent, I can get pretty close on that 14.5-acre parcel anyway in that location. So it kind of helps plan out a little bit. And I'd recommend using this for planning, you know, a couple different areas, you know, because you never know, you might find one you like over the other. So, all right. So then let's go. I'm going to close this real quick, and let's zoom out, and we'll take a look at some of these other parcels in the vicinity. So yeah, we'll say, yeah, let's go up here and yes. So on this one, I mean, so again, this is from one of our, you know, our former offerings. If I wanted to stake over here, I could stake adjacent to their parcel, and I'm just use the polygon tool just to kind of draw it out to make it a little bit more visible. But I would have to stake, you know, one of a couple different ways. So I can do something like this. sharing the entirety of their boundary to where I'm using their 2 corner posts and I am completely abutting that parcel by, whatever, right up next to it, right? Or I could go off over here and I can figure out where about 330 feet is from their parcel. So we'll say right about there-ish. Oops. So, and then I could basically do the same thing. So I can go from, here and I can basically create my own parcel that's, perpendicular to the water body. So now this is where it gets a little tricky, right? So there's a bend right here in the river that comes out. So this, we'll say, and I'm going to put that 5th point in there just for reference. That is going to be a little bit tough because when I get all things considered, when I put that in there, that's going to be perhaps a little bit more than 33% if I'm going on that rectangular, right? So probably what I'm going to have to do is, in this case, is I'm going to have to make it a little bit deeper. Yeah. All right. So I cannot click on the exact point, but anyway, I might have to do something more like this anyway to avoid that 33%, if that makes sense. So those are kind of, some of those considerations for playing that out. But yeah, so this one, it's, roughly perpendicular along this shoreline and this shoreline. I've got 33%, no more than 33% water frontage, and I'm 330 feet away from that boundary right there. And then one other point. So if I wanted to stake up to this other parcel over here, I can kind of plan that one out. And I want a substantially larger parcel than they have. So I could do something like this, perhaps. And so there I am using a part of their boundary, but I'm continuing my line on past it. So I could put, their corner post might even still be out there. So I could just put a nameplate on that, but refresh all the flagging, do all that, flag down the line, and go for that. So any questions on any of that using some of those tools? Yes, sir.
Is there a layer that shows the?
No, not in this map. No, because that's specific to this offering, so it doesn't show that. Yeah. Okay, so there's that, and let's see here real quick. I want to check on one thing here real quick, make sure. Yeah, all right. Okay, so the other thing that this tool is this is very handy for is anytime that you are so these tools over here are the query tools, right? So you can draw a line, draw a polygon, you can drop a point, and then you can query that to give you information. So, I want to, like, I really like this area, right here next to this person. I want to see if, they'll let me stake there. In fact, that looks like a giant moose in the middle of that pond. It's probably still staying there. So that's my parcel now. Anyway, just joking. That'd be really nice if you could actually see moose in the imagery that well. But anyway, but no, so I'm going to go, so I want to stake next to this person. So I'm going to drop a point right there in their parcel, and I'm going to run a query on it. And so like if, when you're putting together your lease application, it's going to ask you for the, the Meridian Township range section, all that. So you can actually pull that up right here. It's going to tell you that, so this is Sewer Meridian Township 19 North, range 56 West, section 26, for instance, right? But it's going to give you any of the information for those layers underneath there. We're going to go to land disposal other, and we're going to look at this, and we can see the owner of that parcel. We can so we can get that individual's name and address. We don't maintain phone numbers or any of that, but you could even send a letter to that person, contact him, and say, hey, I was thinking about staking next to you, whatever. With that said, we only maintain records of the folks that we sell the land to. If they've sold it after that, then if they sold the land after we've sold it to them, we are not going to maintain a record of that in the system. You would have to go to the recorder's office to find that information out, which is actually pretty simple to do. So you can go in here. Let's see. I'm going to go to the Alaska DNR website, go to research. You can go to recorder's office, and you could just do a name search for whomever that person is. And in this case, they're going to be in the Kuskokwim recording district. Anyway, and then I'm just going to search for Jeff Smith. Anyway, we'll assuming that's the guy who it was. And looks like there's no Jeff Smiths. There were a couple John Smiths anyway, but you could figure out if that person had sold it by going through the records that are, recorded to see if they had. So anyway, all right, any questions about any of those tools? All right. So I'm going to clear this, and then let's head over to East Fork Pass real quick. And if you don't mind, Justin. Thank you, sir. All right. All right, so here's East Fork Pass. Very similar kind of deal. This one, I'm going to throw on a couple of additional layers in here because there's some, in fact, I'm going to throw on pretty much everything but the state land layer, just so we can see that. It's going to take a second to load up. My apologies. All right, so this shows on a couple of things. So this is going to be the easement anyway for that. That's the road easement that's up in there for that portion of the Nome Council Road. This shows the material site up in here. This also shows these two meteorological sites. I mean, their coordinates should be pretty accurate for those, but they might be off just a little bit. It also shows these green parcels that are in here. And those green parcels are potential reoffer parcels, or available, as it were. So those are parcels that that might be coming up in a future sale anyway for the area. So you can see where those are at. So you just can't stake over those either because those are already surveyed parcels. I am going to turn off two things. I'm going to turn off this permit or lease layer because that's those green circles. This area is most of the state land up in the Nome areas is covered under various grazing leases for reindeer because there's reindeer that wander all over the place out there. And then there is, I'm going to turn off the state land layer, state tentatively approved or patented state land, just so it takes that gray layer off the background to where you can see what's going on. So, I want to get kind of off the beaten path over here. So I'm going to head down in here, kind of off the south boundary. And I know that there is, although it doesn't show up over here, I know that there's a that trail that kind of comes down here along the northeast boundary of this parcel, southwest boundary of those parcels. And so I'm going to kind of map out the trail, kind of how I want to get out here. So I think I'm going to cut off of this trail somewhere over here, cut down around here over Skookum Creek. And I want to get myself down around on, we'll say, the south side of this parcel, because south facing slope, a little bit more gentle. So I can actually, I can map that out in here and kind of figure out what the topography looks like. Same kind of thing. I can map out the parcel for the, for acreage and size and location, get some approximate coordinates. But I'm going to switch the base layer over here to this national map topo. And then if you zoom in a little bit, you can get a little bit more defined. We'll see. Yeah. So you can get a little bit more defined contours, which it looks like it's taking a little bit to load. But anyway, a little bit better reference for the topography and that kind of stuff. So you can, map out kind of where you might want your trail, where you might want your access based on, where that is. And we can swap back over here to imagery. And actually, let's take a look at Bing and see what Bing looks like. Oh, that's not too bad. Not there. A little patch of scrub brush out there. That doesn't look too bad. Oh yeah, Bing's actually a lot better out here. All right. So, yeah, let me actually do one other thing here real quick. I'm going to scoot up north here. But, oh, that's why. Okay. Because I turned off the permits and easements, the meteorological sites were not showing up. So that's what I was looking for right here. So if I wanted to stake something kind of right off the, the Nome Council Road, something right up here in this area. So I know that there's this meteorological site right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop a point right here on top of where that's at. So I can turn that permits and easements layer off. Anyway, and then for that one, similar kind of deals we were looking at before. We're just going to measure the length, and basically I can stake anywhere within a radius, or like anywhere outside of a 70-foot radius of that. So as long as I'm staying 70 feet away, I'm totally fine. So I could kind of get up on, kind of the south side of this little ridge right up here. Anyway, and stake over here. And yeah, so if I'm 250 feet away right over there, I can be kind of on that little spot there. So, but with that being said, I'm guessing that the meteorological site is actually probably on top of that knoll there, would be my guess. Anyway, so whatever's actually in the field actually, takes precedent anyway. But yeah, I can outplan a little bit. All right. Any questions from anybody online or in person here? All right. Well, that's all we've got for you. So I thank you very much for showing up. Thank you very much for tuning in online. Yeah, if for folks, I don't know, online, if you wanted to, if you want to maybe set up some contact information with other stakers in there. I don't know if anybody's been on the chat because I can't see the chat. Oh, yeah.
On the Staker research page too.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so Justin is passing out some workshop evaluation forms here for folks online. If you'd be willing to take a look at that, it's on the Stakers Resources page, and give us some information about it. We'd love to hear more. So your feedback definitely helps us improve these. So Justin, I don't have access to the chat. I want to see if anybody, if there's folks in the chat, if you guys want to share contact information in the chat to where you can kind of share with each other, maybe, meet some of your stakers from the areas. We can dump that in the chat, and folks can log into that and take a look at it later if you want. So. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Have a good day, and good luck staking.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Have a good weekend.
Yep, you too. Take care, Denise.